Troy, Michigan, August 12, 2000. It was a typical Saturday morning in this affluent bedroom community 20 miles north of Detroit.
Detroit is a beautiful city. Very nice, middle class. Most of the people that live there are white collar types and educated.
And despite being in Detroit's shadow, crime is so low that when a late-night 911 call comes in, it's more often than not to report a medical emergency, which appeared to be the case at 4:25 that morning, when the city's 911 dispatch received an urgent call from one of the area's upscale neighborhoods.
My husband is dead on the floor.
The caller was 60-year-old Billie Jean Rogers.
Do you know what happened?
I have no idea. We were at the casino. I was with my niece. She's visiting us from out of town.
She reported that they had come home from the casino and found him.
And based on what Billie told the dispatcher, he had been dead for some time.
He's very cold. I hear Billy cold.
When police and paramedics arrived on the scene minutes later, they confirmed it. 74-year-old Donald Rogers lay dead on the kitchen floor.
He was an elderly gentleman, and there did not appear to be any foul play in his death.
And as Billie explained to the authorities, her husband was a chronic alcoholic.
There had been a history of his being drunk and being injured. I don't think the cops thought anything unusual.
At the scene, the police briefly questioned Billie Jean and her niece, 33-year-old Vonlee Titlow.
Vonlee was very glamorous, very blonde.
And very upset.
Miss Titlow is a very emotional person.
She was surprised, she was distressed. They'd gone out that evening and they came back. And there he was.
Of course, it was natural for a young woman to be upset by her uncle's sudden death. And just as natural for the police and EMTs to consider it routine.
Alcoholics do die at home. It's not an everyday occurrence, but it's not by any stretch of the imagination a rare occurrence.
However, as the investigation would reveal, nothing about Donald Rogers' death was what it appeared to be. Not even the identity of the young woman who claimed to be his niece. Born in 1967, Vonlee Nicole Titlow grew up in the mountains of Tennessee.
I was 17 when Vonlee was born. I lived with my mama in an old shack with outside plumbing.
It was a hard life, but the family pulled together.
My grandmother pretty much raised Vonlee.
My mama always had Vonlee a bath and was powdered up and smelling perfect when I got up.
She looked perfect, too. Even as a small child, she loved to play dress-up with her younger sisters.
She'd have on grayish gowns. She put makeup on the girls, painted their fingernails.
And by the time she was a teen, Vonlee had developed a serious knack for fashion.
In junior high, she began to develop the actual expertise of makeup and dressing.
After high school, Vonlee went to cosmetology school and worked as a nail technician.
Vonlee did finish 4 years of nails and pedicures and manicures.
But her greatest beauty creation was herself.
She lived her life to groom herself to be as attractive as she could be. The right clothing, the right makeup.
Vonlee was very glamorous looking.
In fact, she was so glamorous that men regularly took notice.
She was very striking. She was somebody you might talk to at a bar.
She's got that bit of a southern drawl, which is just engaging.
And in her early 20s, when she met a well-off older man from Nashville at a bar one night, Vonlee's engaging personality and good looks proved to be her ticket out of East Tennessee.
Bought Vonlee a new car, had a brick mansion on the hill, and took care of Vonlee.
If you were to see photos of her from that time, she was really attractive. She was hot. She was sexy. What guy doesn't want that on their arm?
Vonlee spent several years in Nashville, just not with the same man. For a pretty party girl like Vonlee, there was always someone else vying for her attention. Someone with a bigger house and a flashier car.
Everything just seemed to be very exciting for her.
None of the relationships really lasted, but that didn't matter to Vonlee.
Vonlee's lifestyle was not one in which emotional bonds were made, kept, retained, and nourished over years. She was what's happening right here, today, we're having fun, I love it, oh, tomorrow, it's another day.
And by the time she entered her 30s in the late 90s, Vonlee had partied her way to a much bigger city, Chicago.
Vonlee never really had a problem with making a living. Vonlee was, a bottle.
At least that's what she told her family back home in Tennessee. But in truth, modeling didn't pay her bills. Men did.
Was she a prostitute? Absolutely not. Was she a good time party girl? Absolutely.
And there were always plenty of sugar daddies willing to pick up the tab.
It was a very heady time for her. She was dressing well, living well. She had an apartment. She didn't have responsibilities.
But she still had family. And despite her party lifestyle, she tried to keep in touch. In the summer of 2000, 33-year-old Vonlee went home to Tennessee for an extended visit. And while she was there, Vonlee got reacquainted with her mother's older sister, Billie Jean. Much like Vonlee, Billie had left home as a young woman, fleeing a childhood filled with poverty and uncertainty.
So when I come back, I'll be a millionaire.
And she'd made good on her promise, more or less. She wasn't a millionaire, but she had married one, her husband, Donald.
Don Rogers was a tool and die shop owner, and he did pretty well for himself.
He was worth at least a couple $1 million.
And thanks to her husband's money, Billie had recently bought a condo in Tennessee, so she could spend more time with her family.
She'd come in driving, brand new vehicles. And we'd go out to eat at the high dollar buffets, and she paid for everybody.
Which meant that in the eyes of nieces and nephews, Billie Jean was practically a movie star.
When she was around, it was almost kind of like a party.
And now that Billie and Vonlee both happened to be in Tennessee at the same time, they quickly realized they were kindred spirits.
And Billie was just as much a free spirit, spending her husband's money, going to the casinos, living the high life.
The pair spent several late nights at the local bars and a casino in the Smoky Mountains.
Her and Vonlee went gambling.
In fact, they got along so well that when Billie Jean flew back home to Michigan, she made Vonlee an offer.
She wanted Vonlee to drive her car to Michigan.
Vonlee's mother urged her to accept Billie's offer.
And I thought Billie Jean will help her get a job and help her with her life. That's what I thought.
Although, as it turned out, it was Billie who needed help.
Billie needed a friend.
And when Vonlee met her Uncle Donald, it was easy to see why Billie was lonely.
Donald was a drinker.
He never really left the house. He sat at the house every day and drank.
He would be pretty much unconscious from drinking every night.
So for the next 6 weeks, Vonlee lived with her aunt and uncle, accompanying Billie out to Detroit bars and casinos while Donald drank.
She's living in a really large, beautiful house. All of her meals are paid for. No rent. No job that she had to have. And every night, alcohol, gambling with her friend.
However, that hadn't stopped the attractive 33-year-old from lining up her next prospective sugar daddy. Danny Chaheen, a well-off 40-year-old she had met while out with Billie at a Detroit casino.
We had family businesses, but he was also acting as a jeweler. He certainly made a lot of money and certainly was very free with it.
And by August, when she wasn't gambling or drinking with Billie, Vonlee was often out on a date with Danny.
You've got this May-December situation going on.
But as it turned out, their romance wouldn't last long. and neither would Vonlee's Uncle Donald. Coming up, Vonlee's boyfriend claims that her uncle's death wasn't due to natural causes.
He wasn't dead when they got there.
And he makes an even more surprising revelation about Vonlee.
I'm still in shock, I'm playing you.
Early on the morning of August 12, 2000, police in Troy, Michigan got a 911 call from a woman in one of the Detroit suburbs' upscale neighborhoods.
I just walked in the door, and my husband's laying on the floor in the kitchen, and it looks like he's dead.
The caller, 60-year-old Billie Jean Rogers, had just returned home from a girls' night out with her 33-year-old niece, Vonlee Nicole Titlow.
I'm going to the casino. No, you did that alone all that time. Yes.
When the police's husband, 74-year-old Donald Rogers, dead on the kitchen floor, apparently from natural causes.
The scene presents itself as a known alcoholic dead on the floor with no bruising, no knife wounds, no gun wounds, no furniture in disarray, nothing that has them think that something more has happened.
And when the medical examiner looked at Donald's body and blood samples later that same morning, all the signs indicated that Donald had simply drunk himself to death.
He had some chronic alcoholism issues.
He was just simply riddled with cirrhosis and all of the other issues that go along with being a lifelong alcoholic.
And with a blood alcohol level of 0.44, he was also drunk when he died.
That's 4 times the legal driving limit.
The medical examiner said he died of either a heart attack or from liver failure.
The case appeared all but closed. But then, on August 30th, 2000, little more than 2 weeks after Donald Rogers' death, the Troy Police Department's homicide unit got a call from a policeman in Bloomfield, Michigan, another Detroit suburb.
A Bloomfield officer call the detective directly, find out if they have an open investigation going on.
According to the officer, he was asking on behalf of a friend of his, a jeweler and businessman named Danny Shaheen.
He had developed relationships with various Troy police officers.
Danny was also in a romantic relationship with Donald Rogers' niece, Vonlee Titlow. And according to what Danny had told his friend in the police department, she had recently come to him with a shocking story. Within hours of the phone call, Danny was sitting down with investigators from the Troy Police Department.
I really appreciate you coming in.
Danny told the police that he had been going out with Vonlee for about a month when her uncle died.
It would have been the end of sure when I met her.
And according to Danny, he'd been out to dinner with Vonlee on August 13th, the night after her uncle's death, when he started wondering if it wasn't due to natural causes.
Vonlee said that her aunt was tired of caring for him. He was a chronic alcoholic, and she was tired of dealing with it.
My conscience is saying you should go to the police.
That wasn't the only thing that made Danny suspicious either. The casino regular told the investigators that Billie Jean was a hardcore gambling addict.
She was down at the casino 4, 5, 6 nights a week.
Every time I was with her, she was winning.
But according to Danny, those nights were the exception, not the rule.
She was losing money left and right. There was one night where she lost $13,000.
You can burn through a lot of money very quickly gambling.
She owed $40,000.
Debts that her husband had refused to pay off, according to what Vonlee supposedly told Danny.
She told me that her aunt and her uncle got in a big fight.
So she was kind of desperate.
And according to Danny, Vonlee had told him that was the real reason her uncle was dead.
She told him the story of how her and her aunt had murdered the uncle.
Based on what Vonlee had supposedly told Danny, It wasn't really a plan. Instead, it was just an idea her aunt had been mulling over for some time.
In Billie Jean's mind, according to Vonlee, she was going to kill him and get his money.
And then, in the early morning hours of August 12th, Billie and her niece had come home from the casino and found Donald passed out drunk.
I remember her telling me that he wasn't dead when they got there.
But he soon would be.
Billie wanted to see him dead, and she'd had an idea how she wanted to do it. Now here is the opportunity.
First, according to Danny, Vonlee said that she and her aunt had hoped to kill Donald with alcohol poisoning.
She said they kept pouring vodka into his mouth.
But in his drunken stupor, they couldn't get Donald to actually swallow the liquor.
It was just going all over the place.
So according to what Vonlee allegedly told Danny, Billie had come up with another idea.
She said, and then my aunt gets a pillow and put it over his head.
They smothered him with a pillow.
Was it true? Had Vonlee really confessed to murdering her uncle? According to Danny, the answer was yes.
The demeanor was very serious.
She has tremendous guilt, and part of her way of dealing with it was talking about it.
This is not something that she could keep deep down, not a deep, dark secret.
It wasn't Vonlee's only secret, though. According to Danny, she had another, one that he claimed gave her a motive for murder.
She told me that she's not the woman.
Born Harry Vonlee Titlow, from an early age, Vonlee's mother had known that her son was different.
I knew. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew.
Vonlee's mother may have known, but even in his teens, Vonlee had struggled with denial.
He tried dating. He dated 2 girls that I know of.
But eventually, the troubled teenager's true nature had won out.
She began to dress and to grow her hair and to behave more feminine.
Being openly transgendered was a brave decision, especially in the heart of the Bible Belt.
Most of them end up losing their families completely.
But thankfully, Vonlee's family was different.
I had to accept him because I loved him.
And with the support of her family, Vonlee began living as a woman at the age of 18.
If you didn't know that he was a male, you would never know. I mean, he looked like a female.
Especially after some breast augmentation.
He went entered a contest and come in 2nd place in a bikini.
The transformation wasn't entirely complete, however.
Vonlee wanted sexual reassignment surgery.
It wasn't an easy decision. The surgery required extensive pre-op hormone treatments and psychological counseling.
It takes 2 years to be in therapy, to go through the transition.
And then there was the expense.
Most surgeries are close to $20,000.
And according to what Danny Chaheen told the police, the cost of the surgery was how Billie had gotten Vonlee involved in killing her husband.
She could manipulate her with offering her a large sum of money.
She said, I got $100,000.
Her uncle's money, her aunt's gambling, and Vonlee's need for cash to complete her transformation. Danny's story sounded plausible, but there was still one little problem. His motive for betraying Vonlee.
Men that go out with a pre-op transsexual, they can turn against you.
And by his own admission, Danny hadn't taken the news well.
I told her I'm not that type of person to be with another man. I cannot be.
Even though he had been on 3 different occasions.
You know, in the heat of the moment, you're not going to ask me.
He had no idea that Vonlee was a man.
I'm still in the shock. Have you seen that movie?
I think he considered it an affront to his sense of masculinity.
But was he shocked enough to seek revenge? Accusing Vonlee of a crime she didn't commit? Before things went any further, the investigators asked Danny whether he would be willing to get confirmation.
The police asked him if he would wear a wire, a hidden recording device, and he agreed to do that.
Coming up, Danny gets Vonlee to talk. But will the prosecutors get what they need?
She'd have to testify against her aunt.
By September 1st, 2000, it had been almost 3 weeks since Vonlee Titlow's uncle, Donald Rogers, had died of what the medical examiner determined to be natural causes.
The medical examiner indicates that he could find nothing physical. There had been this history that he was a known alcoholic.
But the day before, Vonlee's boyfriend Danny Shaheen had come forward with a story that was almost too shocking to be believed. If what Danny told the Troy, Michigan police was true, Vonlee and her aunt Billie Jean Rogers had killed Donald in order to get their hands on the retired businessman's millions.
It was all about the money. They wanted money for Billy's gambling debts.
However, Danny claimed that Vonlee had her own reasons to go after Donald's money. According to Danny, the attractive blonde he'd been wining and dining around area casinos needed the cash to finance her gender reassignment surgery.
His name is Harry Vonlee Titlow, and he was born a man.
And his response made the investigators question Danny's motive for coming forward.
From what he said, he was so furious when he found out that she was really a man. He went to his friend, who was a police officer.
Was it possible Danny was seeking revenge against Vonlee by making false accusations about her uncle Donald's death?
He just seemed to be kind of threatened. This woman, this very glamorous woman that he had been dating, was actually a man.
So before the investigation went any further, the Troy police asked Danny to get proof to back up his claim.
They wired him and then sent him out on a date with her.
The pair met up on the evening of September 1st at a Detroit casino. The small talk continued over drinks and dinner, while Danny clumsily tried to steer the conversation onto Donald Rogers' death.
He's not very skilled at tricking somebody into making a statement.
But eventually, her uncle's death did come up, especially the guilt she felt over it. The investigators heard Vonlee too. First, when she described how her Aunt Billie had killed her husband. And when she confirmed that Billy had paid her for taking part in the murder.
You wrote me $100,000 check. I feel guilty for spending the money. I thought I'd just give it to charity or something. And I told them that's what you do.
The investigators had what they wanted. And when they pulled Billie Jean Rogers' financial records, they found even more evidence to support a case for murder.
They subpoena the bank records. What do they see? Checks to Vonlee.
Billie could easily afford it, based on what she had inherited from her husband's estate.
He was worth several $1 million.
Between the financial motive and Vonlee's taped confession, the investigators figured they had a strong case for murder. But one hurdle remained.
The medical examiner had said he died of natural causes.
And another examination would be impossible.
The body had been cremated.
All the investigators had to work with were photos from the coroner's report. And after reviewing them carefully, another medical examiner noticed something that the initial exam missed.
A rug burn scratch right on the nose that was not the type of injury you would get on a linoleum floor from a fall.
Instead, it matched the manner of death that Vonlee had described.
Abrasions here indicate he was smothered by a pillow.
On December 5th, 2000, the medical examiner's office changed Donald Rogers' cause of death to asphyxia by smothering and ruled it a homicide. And investigators quickly turned their attention to Vonlee and Billie Jean. On January 4th, 2001, Vonlee was arrested for her uncle's murder.
It charges first-degree premeditated murder conspiracy, which means the two of them planned in advance together what to do.
However, Billie Jean offered the investigators a very different explanation for her husband's so-called murder. Her niece had made the whole thing up.
Let me explain about Nicole. She was held in wild ass stories.
Basically, her theory in dealing with Vonlee's statements to her boyfriend were Vonlee's crazy. She's drunk, she made it all up, she likes the drama of it all.
Despite that claim, less than 2 months later, Billie Jean was arrested on the same murder and conspiracy charges as Vonlee. However, she used money from her husband's estate to pay her own $100,000 bail.
The law, until she's convicted, won't allow that money to be frozen.
Billie Jean refused to post her niece's bail, however.
I'm sure that one of the first things that her attorney told her was that we now separate from her completely, or she's on her own.
Instead, it was the prosecution who offered Vonlee a way out and a way to avoid a murder trial.
The prosecution offered that she could plead guilty to manslaughter with an agreed-upon sentence of 7 to 15 years.
Although in order to earn the deal and dodge the murder charge, Vonlee would have to help the prosecutors get the real killer.
She'd have to testify against her aunt at her aunt's trial.
But then, just as the deal had been made, fate intervened, or more precisely, a lawyer by the name of Fred Toka. Toka wasn't Vonlee's attorney, at least not when he first contacted her in jail.
Frederick Toka comes in while Vonlee is represented by counsel, which is a complete ethical violation.
So was the offer he made to Vonlee.
It wasn't just I can get you a better deal, it was I can make you a star. There was the lure of movie rights, book rights, modeling contracts, fame.
Blinded by Toka's promises, Vonlee fired her attorney and hired Toka.
He has her sign a retainer agreement for the media rights to her story.
And her story was about to take a surprising twist. Because on November 28th, the day before Billie's trial was scheduled to begin, Toka presented the prosecutors with a new demand.
She will only testify if you give her 3 years. Otherwise, we're going to withdraw our plea.
But the prosecutors refused to renegotiate.
The prosecutor said we will not be held hostage.
So Vonlee's attorney withdrew her manslaughter plea, meaning she would stand trial for murder.
He assured her he could win the case, that she wasn't going to go to prison.
But would Billie be going to prison? When her murder trial began the next day, the prosecutors were suddenly short a star witness.
There is absolutely no evidence against Billie.
Not even the detailed confession that Vonlee had made to Danny Shaheen. Once she refused to testify, it became hearsay.
That doesn't come in.
Star power on her side, thanks to her dead
Murder.
Coming up, Vonlee stands trial for murder.
She has to go to trial on first-degree murder in a case where she's confessed.
But will her so-called confession also offer a way out?
He did both this. Stephen told me why get on the way.
On March 11th, 2002, Vonlee Nicole Titlow went on trial for murder at the Oakland County Circuit Court in Pontiac, Michigan. The 34-year-old and her aunt, Billie Jean Rogers, had made front-page news in the Detroit area after their arrest for the August 2000 murder of Billie's husband, Donald Rogers.
The story jumped to the front pages when it became clear that it wasn't just a spouse killing her husband, that she had involvement from her nephew or niece.
The confusion over whether the accused was Billie's niece or nephew was yet another reason the story landed on the front page.
We've got a really attractive woman who is a transgender going through a sex change.
It was very unclear what we should even call her.
And the story had gotten even more sensational in December of 2001, when a jury acquitted Billie Jean of all charges.
There is absolutely no evidence against Billie. It was an easy acquittal.
There was no evidence, because the state had gone to trial without their star witness, Vonlee.
She had a deal where she would have testified against her aunt, but on her lawyer's advice, she turned down that deal.
And by the time Vonlee stood trial, Fred Toka was no longer representing her.
And once Billie's acquitted, Toka walks away.
Vonlee and her new court-appointed attorney faced a tough fight.
She has to go to trial on first-degree murder in a case where she's confessed.
What I've got is a damaged case, a damaged defendant.
One who had spent the last year in the men's wing of the Oakland County Jail.
Coming in as a transgender, as a female in a male's body, and you're very effeminate, which is what Vonlee was, it's a hard place to be.
It was a hard place for her to maintain her identity, too.
She's been off the medications. She's not given access to a lot of the hair care and skin products. She has put on weight.
But when the trial began, Vonlee was determined to present herself in court as a woman, and the judge graciously granted her request.
The judge had allowed permission for me to bring in makeup and a mirror for Vonlee to ready herself.
And by the time she appeared in court, Vonlee had managed to once again transform into the attractive woman she considered herself to be.
She had a look that was very glamorous, kind of like an old-fashioned movie star. And she maintained that look through the entire trial.
Although from his opening statement to the jury, the prosecutor made it a point to refer to Vonlee as a man.
He would refer to Vonlee as Mr. Titlow.
And as he explained to the jury, the fact that Vonlee wasn't really a woman explained why she had helped kill Donald Rogers. According to the prosecution, it was all about financing her gender reassignment surgery.
What the state does is say that she had assisted her aunt in murdering her uncle for the $75,000 that it would take to travel abroad to actually have the surgery performed.
And the fact that Billie had been acquitted of her husband's murder, it didn't matter. In fact, it was inadmissible.
This case is tried in its own box. Whatever is going on in the media isn't supposed to come in. Whatever happened in the other case isn't supposed to come in.
In the defense's open, Vonlee's attorney told the jurors he wasn't claiming his client was entirely innocent.
This isn't an issue of innocence. This is an issue of the level of guilt.
And according to the defense, what Vonlee was guilty of wasn't murder.
Was she there? Yes. Did she in some fashion attempt to help early on? Yes. Did she do the ultimate act that caused the murder or caused the death? No.
However, regardless of whether Vonlee had actually placed the pillow over her uncle's face or simply stood by and let it happen, the prosecution was determined to convict her of murder, especially since her aunt had been acquitted.
When the prosecutors couldn't convict Billie, they went after Vonlee.
And they had some pretty powerful evidence to use against her. The conversation Danny Chahine had with Vonlee while wearing a wire.
He and his tape recording for the whole case.
And when the prosecution played the tape in court, the result was electrifying.
The tape was jaw-dropping amazing. We all sat there, riveted. This is Vonlee's voice telling everything that happened.
On cross, the defense argued that the gnawing guilt over her uncle's death was precisely why Vonlee had spoken to Danny in the first place.
She just needed to tell somebody. She just needed to confide.
She has a good heart, and she felt very guilty over what had happened to her uncle.
And when it came to just how Vonlee felt, no one could explain it better than her. When they called Vonlee to the stand.
It's just very unnerving just to sit in that box. But she was absolutely composed, with that very soft, mild-mannered voice.
On the stand, Vonlee admitted that after she and Billy found Don unconscious, she'd helped her aunt try to pour vodka down his throat.
Billy attempted to put the alcohol down him. That was her idea, and she was attempting to do it. Vonlee then assisted by helping to hold him up.
But when Dawn began to choke on the vodka,
she just said, "I'm not doing this. This is not right." And that's when she took the alcohol away, left the room.
Vonlee couldn't hardly play.
But her aunt could, and did, according to Vonlee. She testified that when she returned to the room a few minutes later, her uncle was all but dead.
She comes back out, and that's when she sees Billy Rogers with a pillow over her uncle's face.
On the stand, Vonlee admitted that she hadn't tried to stop Billy. Instead, she said she had simply watched, too terrified to do anything.
Kind of like how you watch a horror movie.
Although when her uncle stopped breathing, Vonlee said that she had urged her aunt to call 911. But Billy had refused, according to Vonlee. And when Vonlee reached for the phone, she claimed that her aunt had then threatened to blame her for Donald's death.
She manipulated Vonlee. Vonlee is weak.
And she was no killer, according to the defense.
Vonlee's defense attorney said that it was all Billy, and Vonlee was not an active participant.
In fact, as the defense pointed out, she had even said as much in her so-called confession to Danny Chahine. That may have been Billy's take on things, at least according to Vonlee, but it wasn't the prosecution's. In closing arguments, the DA made it clear to the jury that Vonlee's participation was more than enough to convict her of murder.
In Michigan, if you give even the smallest amount of aid or encouragement to somebody, you're as guilty as that person. So even though her aunt smothered Vonlee's uncle, she's just as guilty as if she had done it herself, because the accepting of the money and the things she did afterwards made her complicit in the crime.
Coming up, Vonlee braces for the
my hand,
and the jury makes its decision. On March 20th, 2002, the jury announced it had reached a verdict in the murder trial of Vonlee Nicole Titlow. The 34-year-old transgendered woman was accused of the murder of her elderly uncle, Donald Rogers, but blamed the entire crime on her aunt, Billie Jean Rogers.
As far as she was concerned, she didn't kill her uncle because her Aunt Billie put the pillow over his face.
However, Billie Jean had been acquitted of her husband's murder.
She walked with millions of dollars and never looked back.
But would Vonlee be as fortunate? It all came down to the reading of the verdict.
After all of the stress, it's a matter of seconds, and the future of your life has been decided.
The jury found Vonlee guilty.
The tears were streaming down my face, and Vonlee was just stoic and emotionless and squeezing my hand. It's like she was holding me together.
The jury's verdict did offer Vonlee something to cling to, though, because while charged with first-degree murder, they chose to convict her of second-degree murder.
We did get the jury to believe it wasn't planned.
The judge wound up imposing a 20 to 40-year sentence.
Although for someone in Vonlee's situation, even 20 years in prison is a...
Well, being in a male's prison, that would sound like a woman's worst nightmare to me.
And Vonlee would no doubt agree.
She was having a very, very difficult time, harassed to the point that she was afraid to leave her cell.
Vonlee did appeal her conviction on the grounds that her attorney, Fred Toka, had provided inadequate representation when he advised her to reject a plea bargain.
He harmed his client. It's everything a lawyer's not supposed to do.
But while the appeal made it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court,
The the Supreme Court ended up unanimously turning down Vonlee's argument.
Her appeal a failure, Vonlee remains in prison, serving time for a crime she maintains she didn't commit.
What happened was tragic. The real person walks free. And the person who had very minimal involvement and actually had the guilt and the remorse and wanted to make things right is sitting in prison.
Rose Chase was different.
She's pretty much always been an outcast.
But so was her husband, Adam.
They're into the sci-fi type stuff, and they just kind of clicked.
They were very happy together.
But then, after 11 years of marriage, Rose's husband vanished.
She just said he walked out. Left his cell phone, his car, everything.
Was it simply a spat?
He went to blow off some steam somewhere.
Or was something else going on?
Call it a mother's intuition.
We weren't gonna find him alive.
The search would reveal the truth about their marriage.
They were kissing and touching in a way that she shouldn't be doing.
Expose a shocking secret. And end with a monstrous revelation.
Head, arms, legs, get him off, no problem.
June 14th, 2012. It was around 6 p.m. when 31-year-old Rose Chase pulled up outside her mother-in-law's house in Stanley, New York, a tiny village in the Finger Lakes region.
Our area is very rural. It's just a very quiet country little town.
Rose had arrived to pick up her young son. She and the boy's father, 31-year-old Adam Chase, had been married 11 years and had been together since high school.
I remembered them first starting dating, like, maybe towards the end of his senior year.
Which made what Rose told her mother-in-law, Sylvia, that much more shocking. Not only had the couple had a violent argument.
Adam supposedly punched a hole in the wall.
Rose said that Adam had stormed out of the house.
Walked out. Left his cell phone, his car, everything at home. He didn't take nothing with him.
And according to Rose, he had been gone almost 7 hours.
He said he was walking, and he left the house around 11 o'clock that day.
My mom would ask her, "Why didn't you call me? We're close. I could have came and talked to him."
Rose said she hadn't thought there was any need at first. Rose told Sylvia that she assumed Adam was just going for a walk to calm down and clear his head.
She said, I figured he'd be home by now.
But after 7 hours with no word from Adam and no way to reach him, the entire family started to worry. Storming off without his phone just wasn't like Adam.
He was always on that thing. You could always get a hold of him no matter what. So him not taking his cell phone was just really bizarre to hear.
Sylvia promised to call as soon as she heard anything. And when Rose left with her son, she said she would do the same. But that night, as she watched Rose drive away, Sylvia had no idea just how many dark and disturbing secrets the search for her son would eventually reveal about her daughter-in-law. Born in 1981 and raised in upstate New York, Rose Mooney had a difficult childhood.
She's pretty much always been an outcast. She had dyslexia. So some of the kids kind of made fun of her when she went to special classes.
Taunted by the other children, Rose became shy and withdrawn, preferring to spend time with her pets rather than kids her own age.
She was thinking about being a veterinarian.
And when Rose's family moved to the remote rural community of Stanley when she was in the 7th grade, she became even more isolated.
She had her animals and mostly kept to herself. She felt like the girl that sat on the sidelines.
But that was about to change, thanks to a boy named Adam Chase. 1 year older than Rose, Adam was a popular kid at her school.
Adam was cute. He was handsome.
He was really tall. He was a big guy.
But he was easygoing and approachable.
He was a big teddy bear. He always reached out to people who could make you feel comfortable within 5 minutes of knowing you.
Partly because for all his popularity, he had quite a few quirks of his own.
Adam liked swords, Renaissance stuff.
He loved computer games, a complete computer geek.
And when he first met Rose, he realized that they shared a kindred spirit.
They're into the sci-fi type stuff, and they just had that in common, so they just kind of clicked.
Although at first, their relationship wasn't romantic.
They used to go to like Renaissance festivals and dress up.
They kind of went together as friends.
And with Adam to guide her, the shy girl who sat on the sidelines soon learned to embrace and even celebrate the fact that she wasn't like all the other kids.
She always had the crazy hairdos. We never knew what she was gonna wear, so makeup or clothing, and she just always made herself stand out.
No one noticed more than Adam. After being friends for several years, he and Rose became a couple.
In high school, they really started dating.
It had been a long time coming, but it appeared to have been worth the wait.
They seemed like they were very happy together.
They wouldn't be high school sweethearts for long, though. Adam dropped out at the start of his senior year.
Because he missed some gym classes and he wasn't making them up. So he quit. He went and got his GED.
Rose, who still struggled with her dyslexia, strongly considered following her boyfriend's example.
She was a whiz in math and science. When it came to English and social studies, she fell behind with the kids.
And according to Rose's mother, Adam encouraged her to drop out, but she wouldn't have it.
Adam wanted her to move in, and I go, when she graduates from school, I don't care what you guys do, but she's going to graduate.
Just as her mother promised, Rose did graduate from high school, but she never pursued her childhood dream of being a veterinarian. Instead, she took an assembly job at a local factory.
She worked all the time, a lot of overtime.
Adam, on the other hand, had a hard time holding down a steady job.
We kind of moved a lot. He was in business mostly. He would sell windows. I think at one point he sold cars.
They weren't making a lot of money, but they had each other. And in June of 2001, when Rose was 19 and Adam had just turned 20, the couple married in true Renaissance fair fashion.
Rose had not your typical wedding dress that you would see these days. It was kind of old-fashioned with some sort of veil that was like a hat, and it was different.
After the wedding, the couple lived temporarily with Adam's parents.
She was just like family.
I treated her just like a sister.
My parents looked at her like a daughter. I mean, she called them mom and dad.
And thanks to the money Rose and Adam saved by living with mom and dad, the couple soon had enough to buy a place of their own in the neighboring town of Bristol.
It's just the next town over. They did live in Bristol for quite a while.
It was just a trailer, and it was only supposed to be temporary. Rose and Adam planned to start a family, but after several frustrating and fruitless years, their doctors delivered some devastating news.
Adam was told that he had trouble.
It was correctable if they could afford it.
It would cost $10,000, and their insurance did not cover it.
Unable to afford the procedure, Rose and Adam soldiered on, hoping for a miracle. And it looked as if their prayers had finally been answered when 6 years into their marriage, Rose gave birth to a son. And it was tough to say who was happier, Rose or Adam.
He loved being a daddy. Would do anything for that little boy.
In fact, once the baby came along, Adam quit his job and became a full-time dad.
Adam was Mr. Mom. He took care of this little boy.
And for the next several years, Rose continued to work.
She was the breadwinner, going out and making sure the family was stable.
And Adam focused on raising their son.
It was Adam giving him breakfast and, getting him dressed and all that.
The couple's arrangement appeared to work. Adam bonded with the little boy, who even as a toddler showed a precocious talent for electronics.
Anything on the computer he knew how to do from Adam.
Or you can type it in. Oh yeah, very computer oriented.
Rose, meanwhile, got promoted at work.
The supervisor described her as being very responsible and very dependable.
In fact, after 12 years together, the couple was doing so well that in 2011 they sold their place in Bristol and bought a bigger house on the outskirts of Stanley.
Adam wanted to move closer to home.
We've always been a very close-knit family.
Moving closer to home wasn't the only big change the couple made, however. With their little boy scheduled to start kindergarten in the fall of 2012, Adam began looking for work. And by May, he'd even managed to line up something.
He was to being a debt collector for student loans.
A new home, a new job, and their son about to start school. Everything appeared to be going well for Rose and Adam. But less than a month later, Rose would walk into her mother-in-law's house and announce that her husband had vanished. Coming up, the search for Adam begins.
I always just had that little bit of hope, hoping that Adam just needed time.
And at least some members of his family suspect foul play.
Call it a mother's intuition.
By the afternoon of June 15, 2012, it had been almost 24 hours since 30-year-old Rose Chase had walked into her mother-in-law's house in Stanley, New York, and reported that her husband, Adam, had mysteriously disappeared.
She walked in and said, "Oh, and by the way, Adam walked away this morning about 11 o'clock. Him and I had a fight."
Sounded as though he got mad at his wife and went to blow off some steam somewhere.
But when Sylvia Chase spoke to her on the morning of the 15th, Rose said that Adam still hadn't come home or called.
I called her. I said, "Have you heard anything from Adam?" "No, I haven't."
Even more troubling, Sylvia hadn't heard anything from Adam either.
She thought something was wrong because she hadn't been hearing from him. They spoke pretty much every day.
Worried about her son, Sylvia decided to contact the authorities.
She had contacted a sheriff's deputy that was a school resource officer at the school where she works.
I said, "What should I do about this?" He goes, "Let's file him missing." I said, "Okay."
Once the missing persons report was filed, the investigators contacted the last person who'd seen Adam, his wife.
They thought that maybe she just said something to him, which made him so mad that he left.
According to Rose, that was more or less exactly what happened. But she also said that was hardly the couple's first heated argument. Rose told the investigators that their troubles had started soon after Adam quit his job to become a stay-at-home dad. Although according to Rose, he spent more time playing video games on his computer than he did with their child.
It was a virtual video game that he played with other people online. They would go until way early in the morning. He would sit 4 hours to the point that he wouldn't get up to go to the bathroom. He would urinate in cans and bottles instead.
Rose told the investigators that she had started to feel neglected.
She didn't feel as though she got enough attention from her husband, that he paid more attention to video games.
According to Rose, Adam wasn't just neglecting her, he was neglecting his babysitting duties too. She told the investigators that while she was at work, Adam would sleep in, exhausted from a late night of gaming, and leave their little boy to fend for himself.
There's been times that Adam left him in the same diaper all night.
Rose even claimed that when the child was 3, Adam had let the little boy wander out of the house, naked and alone.
He must have wet himself, where he stripped himself down naked. Couldn't find Mom in the house, couldn't get Dad up. Got outside, got onto the street, and started walking down the street where a couple found him.
Their little boy wasn't hurt, but according to Rose, the incident did lead to an increasing number of arguments with Adam, especially whenever she suggested he seek help for what she described as his video game addiction.
Adam's temper sometimes got the best of him.
Rose admitted that she had gotten angry too. In fact, she told the investigators that things got so heated between her and Adam that they had even discussed getting a divorce.
Rose had enough.
Although according to Rose, she had tried to work things out for the sake of their little boy.
Rose asked to go through some counseling and see if it was worth saving their marriage.
Rose said that Adam had refused to seek counseling, but she did say that he had taken June 14th off from work, and they sent their son to spend the night at her in-laws so she and Adam could spend the day together and hopefully sort things out.
Rose and Adam that day had agreed to talk about their problems.
But according to Rose, when she tried to talk to her husband, he ignored her.
Adam continued to play on the computer, which angered Rose.
Tempers flared and voices were raised.
They had a fight.
And at some point during the shouting match, Rose said that things took a sudden turn toward violence.
She said, my son punched the wall.
But that was as far as it went, according to Rose. Because then, perhaps afraid he would do something he'd regret, Rose said Adam had stormed out of the house.
Adam had walked away, and he hadn't taken his phone or his car keys or his wallet.
And by the time Rose finished talking to the investigators, he had been missing for more than 24 hours.
She didn't know where he went.
With no solid leads, the investigators spent the next few days scouring the surrounding countryside.
They searched places they knew he liked to hike.
Searches in the woods and the trails.
Canvassing hotels, looking for, basically for where Adam might have been.
But all the searches turned up empty. And by the end of the week, with still no word from Adam, his family was beginning to fear the worst.
Call it a mother's intuition, but I knew something was wrong because Adam would have called me.
Adam's mother wasn't the only one beginning to suspect something had gone horribly wrong either. On June 18th, after Adam had been missing 4 days, sheriff's deputies showed up at Rose's house with a cadaver dog.
They asked if they could bring the dog inside.
Rose let the deputies inside, although she did apologize for the state the house was in.
The house was really messy, smelly, cluttered.
And the only evidence the investigators found upstairs appeared to confirm Rose's account of her altercation with Adam.
There was a hole that had been patched in the wall.
But then, when the deputies asked to look in the basement, Rose did hesitate.
She told them that there was water down there, the sump pump had broke.
Was Rose hiding something? When the deputies opened the door at the head of the basement stairs, that was definitely what it looked like, or at least smelled like.
They did at that time find a very strong odor in the basement.
You know, you could smell like something was dead in the basement.
But when the investigators got to the bottom of the stairs, it appeared that Rose had been telling the truth. The basement was damp and full of soggy trash.
Pieces of furniture, cleaning supplies, dead rats.
And when the deputies brought the cadaver dog down, it gave no indication that a human body had ever been there.
They searched the house and came out and said there's nothing there.
Their suspicions of Rose apparently baseless. The investigators were back to square one. But their findings did provide a little comfort to his family.
In the back of my mind, I always just had that little bit of hope, hoping that Adam just needed time.
And no one appeared more hopeful than Rose.
She would go to the police periodically for updates. She would call
to see if they knew anything, if they were getting close.
Unfortunately, the investigators had little else to tell her. By November, Adam had been missing for 5 months, and the authorities were no closer to finding him.
They were stuck.
The authorities essentially admitted as much on November 14th, 2012. That's when they held a joint press conference alongside Rose and Adam's family.
They came out and pleaded for the public's help, in helping locate Adam.
They also called on Adam to come forward.
They talked a little bit about if he didn't want to be found, he wouldn't be found.
And then, while Rose looked on, her mother-in-law made her own desperate plea to her son.
Adam, if you're out there, please come home.
Coming up, Adam's family makes a shocking accusation.
They were kissing and touching in a way that she shouldn't be doing.
But will they get anyone to listen?
The investigators actually called us crazy.
On November 15th, 2012, a small crowd of newspaper and TV reporters gathered outside a modest home in the tiny upstate New York town of Stanley. 24 hours after the Ontario County Sheriff's Department held a press conference about Adam Chase, who'd been missing for more than 5 months, his family had called a press conference of their own.
I instantly sent a letter out to every media source that I knew, and we held our own press conference the next day.
And the press conference focused on one thing: the way the authorities were handling Adam's disappearance.
They were just treating it as a missing persons.
Assuming that Adam had simply walked out on his wife and little boy, the authorities had ruled out foul play. In fact, when they searched the couple's home after Adam's disappearance, they hadn't found any evidence of foul play either.
They did search the Chase family house on the 18th, including the basement. They did not find anything.
But as the family told the assembled reporters, they were far less convinced than the investigators.
Adam never would have done this to his family.
His son's birthday, the first day of kindergarten, all those firsts, he wouldn't have missed those.
In fact, as far as the family was concerned, Adam's 5-month absence could only mean one thing.
We weren't going to find him alive.
And they believed the person behind it was the same person they'd made a point not to invite to their press conference: Adam's wife, Rose.
Rose did something to him.
Adam's family claimed that their suspicions were based on more than just his mother's intuition, too.
They had a bit of a troubled marriage.
Rose had admitted as much to the investigators. But from there, her account and his family's version differed dramatically. For starters, the family strongly disagreed with Rose's claims that Adam shirked his duties as a stay-at-home dad.
I do not believe a single word that she says about my brother's character.
Instead, they had plenty to say about Rose's character.
I had heard back in 2007 that Rose was having an affair.
And according to the family, that wasn't the only one.
They spoke of Rose having multiple affairs over the years.
But the family said that whenever they had shared their suspicions with Adam, he had always refused to believe them.
He sided with Rose and said that it couldn't happen. He didn't believe that Rose would do anything like that to him.
But then, in June of 2012, the family finally got what they believed to be proof. A family friend had just happened to be strolling through the park in a neighboring town when she spotted Rose cuddling up to someone on a park bench.
She had to take a double take because it wasn't Adam sitting next to Rose.
They were kissing and touching in a way that she shouldn't be doing with somebody who wasn't her husband.
Concerned, the friend had contacted Adam's sister, Jessica, and forwarded a picture she had discreetly taken with her phone. Jessica told her mother, and within days, they'd filled Adam in on the situation.
He didn't believe it at first until my parents sent the picture.
Finally confronted with evidence of his wife's alleged infidelity, Adam realized he had to act according to his family.
He goes, well, I'll talk about it with her.
Whether he did or not, the family didn't know for sure. But within days of his wife being spotted in a park kissing another man, Adam Chase had vanished. But when the family shared their suspicions with the sheriff's department, they said their concerns were dismissed.
The sheriff's department told us it's not an episode of Law and Order and that we needed to stop thinking the worst.
I said, well, have you talked to Rose? Has anybody interviewed her? Do a lie detector test. She hasn't given us any reason for it. She's been very cooperative.
He pulled me aside and said that, you need to let this go. Rose didn't do anything wrong.
The Chases weren't about to give up, however. In the weeks following their press conference, they decided to put pressure on Rose.
We held rallies outside her house. We had signs like missing posters, missing Adam, that kind of stuff.
And the result was an all-out war between Rose and her in-laws.
She called the sheriff's department. She had said that we were harassing her.
She said, I always thought the Chases were a nice family, but now they're all psychos.
And the local authorities warned the family to back off or face arrest.
The investigators actually called us crazy.
However, at least one person in town sided with the Chase family, a local private investigator named Rodney Miller.
He's a very good friend of the family.
He agreed very quickly with them that something seemed wrong.
Unfortunately, even if Rose had been unfaithful, they still had no proof that she had anything to do with Adam's disappearance.
We had our gut and what our heart told us, and to me that was good enough.
Their gut feeling wouldn't hold up in a court of law, however. So on December 13th, 2012, the private investigator approached the local woman who babysat for Rose.
Well, he called me that morning, and he said, will you play a game with me?
And the purpose of the game was to scare Rose into doing something rash. Perhaps even get her to admit that Adam was dead.
I said, I want you to tell her that you heard somebody's going to be charged with murder.
The babysitter, who shared the family's suspicions about Rose, agreed to help.
We all thought that she was behind it in some way.
So when Rose arrived to pick up her son that afternoon, Sandra played her part to the hilt.
She usually always picked him up between 5:10 and 5:15. It was 5:19 when she walked in the door, and she says to me, oh, you probably think I forgot to pick up my son. And I looked at her and I said, no. I figured you were probably on the phone with the investigators.
And when Rose asked why,
I said, because there's been a huge break in Adam's case. She goes, oh my God, her face just went white.
All she can say is, oh, but I gotta get home. Oh, but I gotta get home.
And then when Rose rushed out with her son, Sandra called Rodney.
I said, get over to Rose's house now. I said, she is unraveling.
All she needed was a nudge, which Rodney was happy to provide just as soon as he reached Rose's house.
She comes out of the house, and I walked up and I said, I think I have enough to get an indictment against you and charge you with the murder of your husband.
He told Rose, hey, jig's up. It's over.
It wasn't true, but Rose didn't know that.
She just plopped onto the top step and put her head down in her hands and started rocking back and forth.
Sensing that Rose was about to break, Rodney urged her to come clean.
I said, I want to know where you buried him.
Rose's response wasn't quite what the investigator expected, though.
She popped her head up out of her hands and she said, I didn't bury him. I burned him.
Stunned by Rose's reply, Rodney immediately contacted the authorities and Adam's family.
Rodney calls and he goes, I found Adam.
He didn't give Adam's mother the details, though.
She wanted to know where. I told her to come to her residence. I didn't want to tell her over the phone what I knew.
Sylvia and her daughters rushed right over, arriving even before the authorities. And that's when Rodney Miller finally told them the awful truth. At first, Adam's mother was dismayed by the news.
I couldn't believe it.
But when the full implications of what Rose had done finally sank in, Sylvia turned on her in a rage.
She turned around and screamed at her, you burned my son, you bitch.
How could somebody be this callous and this monstrous to another human being?
According to Adam's family, Rose showed the same callous disregard for them.
She sat on the porch and just looked at us.
No emotion whatsoever.
She didn't break down and cry. or show any remorse.
And once sheriff's deputies arrived on the scene and took Rose into custody, she just as calmly directed them to her mother's house. According to Rose, that was where they would find Adam's remains.
They immediately went to the mother's property down in Yates County.
When the sheriff's deputies knocked on the door and asked for permission to search the property, Rose's mother was confused.
I asked, what are we looking for? Goes, the body of Adam is here on your property.
Rose's mother said she figured it was all some sort of dreadful mistake. But then her daughter stepped out of the squad car, led the deputies to a burn pile in the back of the house, and indicated that somewhere in the pile was all that remained of her husband.
They could see all sorts of things, a lot of ash, including some what appeared to be human bone.
And that was when Rose's calm demeanor finally collapsed.
She's crying. She's going, I'm sorry. I didn't really want this to end up like this. I am so sorry.
It looked like she might have been relieved, that she was finally getting this off her chest.
Coming up, Rose's confession shocks the courtroom.
Head, arms, legs. Came off no problem.
But her defense is the real surprise.
You can't kill a dead person.
On October 8th, 2013, Rose Chase stood trial in Ontario County, New York. The 32-year-old was charged with the murder of her husband, Adam, who had mysteriously disappeared in June of 2012.
Rose reported him missing. That they got into some type of an argument one morning, and he packed up and left and didn't come back.
But in December of 2012, after a private investigator hired by Adam's family convinced her she was about to be arrested for his murder, Rose not only admitted that Adam was dead, she had led the authorities to his cremated remains, scattered in a burn pile behind her mother's house.
They sifted through all that ash and other rubble that was there and collected as many bone fragments as they could.
In their opening statement that morning, the prosecution claimed that Rose had killed Adam in order to get out of an increasingly loveless marriage.
Rose was unhappy in the marriage and cheated on her husband multiple times.
And since being the family's breadwinner and having allegedly been unfaithful would most likely leave her paying alimony to Adam, the prosecution claimed that Rose hadn't considered divorce an option.
She didn't want to share any of the money that she had saved with her husband.
The prosecutors had what they considered to be powerful evidence against her, too. The videotaped confession made after Rose's arrest on December 13th, 2012.
The videotape was pretty significant in the trial, and they played the entire tape.
Although, curiously, much of Rose's confession conformed to what she'd originally told the authorities after Adam had first disappeared. According to Rose, she had begun the day intending to save her marriage, not end it.
Him and I called into work so this way we could work things out.
But Rose claimed that their attempt to talk things over had quickly turned into an argument, once Adam brought up the fact that someone had seen her in the park, supposedly kissing another man.
I told him it's just me on the park bench talking.
According to Rose, her denials only made Adam angrier. So angry that he had even started questioning whether he was really the father of their son.
He always said, deep down in my heart, I love him down, but I don't think he's mine.
One way or another, he wanted to know for sure.
Adam wanted a DNA test.
Rose said that's when, in her anger, she had revealed a secret that she had kept hidden for years.
I told him then, no need.
She says he's not yours.
According to Rose, her husband hadn't taken the truth well.
He got furious, punched the wall.
Then Adam turned to storm away, much as she had originally claimed. But in the videotape, Rose added a new detail. The fact that she had tried to stop him.
I grabbed him by his left arm. He takes a spray out, kind of gives me a little bit of a push.
And according to Rose, that was when everything had gone horribly wrong.
And that's when his right foot caught the edge of the stairs.
According to her confession, Adam's death had been an accident.
And every time I don't know how many times. I don't know. His head on the door.
Was it true? Had Adam simply fallen down the stairs? The investigators were skeptical. On the tape, they asked Rose point blank, did Adam trip, or had he been pushed?
If it was the heat of the moment and you thought enough was enough and you pushed him, you pushed him. It's what it is.
Put on the spot by the investigators, Rose appeared to hesitate.
I don't know if I actually gave him that extra oomph.
She can try and pretend that it was an accident, but I know it was not an accident.
Did you plan on
Oh, hell no.
Intentionally or not, the results appeared to be the same. Rose said that when she rushed down to where Adam lay sprawled at the bottom of the stairs, he appeared to be dead.
He wasn't moving. He wasn't making any noise. He wasn't doing anything.
But if it had been an accident, why not call 911? Rose told the investigators that as she wondered what to do, she had come to a shocking realization. And if he did live, according to Rose, what she'd just told him about their son's paternity would give him excellent grounds for divorce.
I knew he'd get my 401k and everything.
In her dimension mind, it was easier just to get rid of him.
So rather than call the police, Rose said that she had heaved her husband down the second flight of stairs.
Basically to make sure that he was dead.
Flying down the stairs.
Gravity do its work.
She'd let time do its work too. Rose told the investigators that she had left Adam where he lay.
She stacked wood from the yard and other items on top of him.
Incredibly, according to Rose, he was still in the basement when the sheriff's department brought in cadaver dogs and searched the house.
After I hid the body, and the dogs came in, I thought I got pretty lucky.
They brought an outdoor cadaver dog. An outdoor cadaver dog is different than an indoor cadaver dog, and they're not trained the same. They have different expertise.
But with Adam's family increasingly suspicious and the smell in the basement getting worse, Rose said that she knew her luck wouldn't last. So in late July of 2012, after Adam had been in the basement for more than a month, she had decided to get rid of him once and for all.
Did you cut him up for anything? Did you need any tools or anything? Because if you did, where would those be?
He just fell apart.
She said I took him out piece by piece.
Head, arms, legs. He came off no problem.
It's shocking what she's saying, but then just how casual she goes about telling the details.
Including the detail that her 5-year-old son had been with her, strapped in his car seat when she drove over to her mother's with Adam's remains in the trunk of her car.
There was no one there to take care of the boy. She says, well, what the hell, I'll just take him along.
That video just kind of puts a nail in the coffin and shows just how awful she is and how callous of a person she is.
That's definitely what the prosecution figured. And when it was the defense's turn, they agreed that Rose's videotaped statement had been appalling. But they also argued that it wasn't a murder confession.
Rose's lawyers talked about how it was an accident, how Rose didn't mean for Adam to die. She didn't mean for him to fall down the stairs.
At least not when he'd gone down the first flight of stairs. But what about the second flight? According to the defense, that wasn't murder either.
Her defense basically argued he was dead after he went down that first flight of stairs. The second flight was intentional, but he was already dead, so that's not murder.
They are claiming you can't kill a dead person.
Rose wouldn't make that claim directly, though. Considering how damaging her videotaped statement had been, the defense decided not to put her on the stand.
I've spoken the truth, but my words have ultimately been turned around against me.
In fact, the defense didn't put anyone on the stand.
Rose's attorney did not call any witnesses.
Instead, before wrapping up their case, the defense requested and received an important concession from the judge, a jury instruction that just might allow Rose to dodge the murder charge.
The defense argued to have manslaughter put on the jury selection card so they could choose either murder two, which is intentional, or manslaughter, which was accidental.
Coming up, will the jury find Rose guilty of murder?
The longer it took for the jury to come back, the more nervous I got.
Or will they opt for manslaughter?
I didn't do what everybody's claiming.
On October 18, 2013, at the Ontario County Courthouse in upstate New York, the jury announced it had just reached a verdict in Rose Chase's murder trial. Thanks to the persistence of the victim's family and their private investigator, the 32-year-old mother was accused of killing her husband, Adam, in June of 2012.
I don't doubt for a second that she, in some sort of way, planned it.
The defense, on the other hand, had argued that Rose was only guilty of hiding her husband's death, not causing it.
Their defense is that he accidentally fell down the stairs, and then she panicked.
And the jury had just spent the past 7 hours trying to decide which side to believe.
The longer it took for the jury to come back with a verdict, the more nervous I got.
The whole situation was just stressful, not knowing what was going to happen.
In the end, all that stress and uncertainty came down to the crucial moment when the verdict was read.
She was found guilty of second-degree murder.
It was a hard-won victory for Adam's family.
I'm ecstatic that there was a guilty verdict.
I was terrified throughout the entire trial that she would get away with it.
But while Adam's mother was equally pleased that her daughter-in-law had been found guilty, she was less thrilled with Rose's sentence. 24 years to life in prison.
I wish we had the death penalty. I really do. Because I don't think she deserves to live.
A lot of people forgive at sentencing, but this family says they will never forgive her.
That's no surprise, according to Rose. She claims that the only reason she's in prison at all is because Adam's family was so determined to put her there.
My trial was nothing more than like a modern-day Salem witch trial. And they had a bed for me waiting in a prison before the verdict was in.
And she'll be there a long time, especially if Adam's family has any say in the matter.
She'll see me at every parole hearing for the rest of her life. Fighting for my brother because she took away his voice, but she's not going to take away his memory.
Rose, on the other hand, maintains that no time in prison and no jury's verdict can take away what she believes to be true, her innocence.
I didn't do what everybody's claiming that I said I did.
Michelle Williams was young, blonde, and beautiful.
With baby doe eyes that everyone fell in love with.
Greg Williams was her equally handsome husband.
Greg was a very athletic guy, very attractive.
He was her prince. She was his princess.
But they wouldn't live happily ever after.
She ran out yelling. Neighbors called 911.
He had 3 gunshot wounds.
The shocking crime would captivate their quiet suburban community.
It was intense media coverage.
The reporters descending on the house.
But was it the random murder Michelle claimed? Or would the police uncover enough dark secrets to bring her crashing down?
I heard one of them say, "You're not going to believe this."
Columbus, Ohio, September 30th, 1993. It was a typical Thursday afternoon in a quiet townhouse community on the city's northwest side.
This would have been considered a suburban middle-class neighborhood in the northwest side of Columbus where crime didn't happen.
But then, at a little before 2 o'clock, 23-year-old Michelle Williams ran out the front door of her newly rented townhouse, screaming.
She ran out yelling. Neighbors called 911 and so forth.
And if the screaming woman wasn't shocking enough, what she was screaming about was truly terrifying.
A stranger had come in to her townhouse and shot her husband.
Panicked neighbors dialed 911, and within minutes, the normally peaceful community was filled with emergency vehicles and flashing lights.
In a very, very short period of time, there was emergency personnel along with the police department right there.
When they arrived on the scene, first responders found Michelle's husband Greg collapsed on the living room couch, unconscious, covered in blood, and barely alive.
He had 3 gunshot wounds, 2 in the chest and 1 in the arm.
As the EMTs rushed Greg to the hospital, the police tried to quiet Michelle down enough to take a brief statement. But it wasn't easy.
She was very hysterical.
Eventually, however, she did manage to give them a description of the shooter.
She described it like a maintenance man wearing a tool belt.
Said he came in, shot her husband a number of times, and then took off.
And as far as Michelle knew, he'd fled on foot.
The patrol officers started quickly scouring the area.
By then, local news crews had also arrived on the scene.
All the media heard about this and showed up to film what they could find out.
And what they found was Michelle. A distraught widow urging the police to track down her husband's killer. It made for dramatic television. But it was just the beginning of a strange saga that would not only leave Michelle's private life exposed, it would send her reeling. Born in 1970, Columbus native Michelle Clayman had a comfortable childhood.
The neighborhood where Michelle grew up was a very nice neighborhood.
She came from a very, very tight-knit, very devout Catholic family.
Michelle, she was really close with her family. She was a mama's girl.
And Michelle appeared to be the perfect product of her background and upbringing.
Good morals, good background, very sweet girl, loving, outgoing, energetic.
After graduating high school in 1988, Michelle stayed close to home, enrolling in the marketing program at the university that was practically in her backyard, Ohio State.
She felt that she could have been a great success in that field with her background.
But before hitting campus that fall, Michelle took a summer job at the Northwest Swim Club, a private aquatic complex in the city's upscale suburbs.
Michelle just worked in the office there, the front desk, letting people in and taking money and stuff like that.
And it was at Northwest that Michelle first met Greg Williams. 7 years older than Michelle, Greg was also from Columbus, where he'd been one of the most popular kids in his class at Worthington High.
Greg was a fun, easygoing guy. He had a lot of friends.
Greg was a class clown. Knew when to cut up, knew when to be smart in school. He was always very dedicated with his studies.
But most of all, he was a natural athlete.
He was active in sports ever since he was young. Swimming was his forte, his main thing.
He made it to the Junior Olympics.
And when he graduated high school in 1981, it looked as if Greg was destined for a collegiate swimming career, too.
He had some schools looking at him for scholarships.
But Greg had different plans.
He decided to serve his country in the U.S. Air Force.
Greg spent 4 years in the Air Force and then returned home to pursue a college degree at Ohio State.
His dream was to become an accountant.
He worked 2 jobs to put himself through college.
And for one of those jobs, he fell back on his first love, swimming.
Greg was the swim coach at Northwest Swim Club.
In the summer of 1988, it wasn't long before Greg noticed the new girl working the front desk.
She was young, attractive, was blonde, with baby doe eyes that everyone fell in love with.
Including Greg. And when he asked Michelle out on a date, she readily accepted.
Greg was a very athletic guy, very attractive, curly hair, always tan from working at the pool.
Soon, the couple was dating.
From the get-go, they pretty much hit it off right away.
And by the time the summer was over, Greg had already told his family that he was head over heels.
Greg wasn't the type to date around, a bunch of girls. If he found a relationship, he was very serious and devoted to it.
Before long, Greg's family had fallen for Michelle, too.
She was welcomed by the whole family. She really was.
We were really good friends.
For the next 3 years, the couple was inseparable.
Every time they were together, seemed like they were smiling.
Michelle seemed like any other college girl, enjoyed life and love, enjoyed being with Greg.
And together they sampled everything that Ohio State had to offer.
The campus there is always a very lively, very fun place to go any time of year, especially during football season.
Ohio State, the Buckeyes, is one of the biggest things around here.
But they wouldn't be college sweethearts forever. Greg graduated in the fall of 1991.
Greg graduated from Ohio State with a degree in accounting.
And when Greg moved away for an internship in Colorado, he made it clear that he intended to keep Michelle in his life by proposing.
He had an apartment out there, and Michelle stayed back here because she had to finish up her senior year at Ohio State.
They were waiting for Michelle to finish her schooling at Ohio State and to graduate before they set the wedding date and got married, and she would move out to Denver.
And 8 months later, the 21-year-old looked every bit the happy bride when Greg came home for their wedding in April of 1992.
He was her prince. She was his princess.
They appeared to be well on their way to living happily ever after, too. After the wedding, Michelle joined Greg in Denver, since the 29-year-old had parlayed his internship into a full-time accounting job.
A job with one of the big accounting firms in Colorado.
It was a great career opportunity for Greg, one that Michelle appeared to support.
When they first moved to Colorado, Michelle seemed to be excited.
But her excitement soon faded. Despite her brand new marketing degree, she had a hard time finding a job in her field, and she had to settle for something else.
Michelle worked as a human resources clerk at a communications company.
It may not have been Michelle's dream, but there was no denying that settling in the Denver suburbs did have its advantages.
Greg and Michelle enjoyed skiing. They were big skiers.
Colorado seemed like a perfect fit for them.
Everything seemed to be going very well.
However, 9 months after moving out west, the novelty of living in Colorado had started to wear off, at least for 22-year-old Michelle.
Michelle was homesick.
Deeply homesick for her friends and family back in Ohio.
She was born and raised here all her life and never left. That's why she got so homesick when they moved out to Colorado. She was away from her family.
Michelle still hadn't found a marketing job in Denver either, so she started dropping hints about going home.
Michelle was the one who was pretty set on coming back to Ohio.
And it didn't take much to convince Greg to go along.
Greg did everything to make Michelle happy.
So even though Greg had a great job in Denver, he agreed to move back.
He came up with a plan, too. At the beginning of 1993, he contacted his younger brother and floated the idea of starting their own company in Columbus.
He had called me one night and said something about opening up a pest control company.
Jeff was initially surprised by the proposition.
I thought he had his dream job.
But he was also excited by the idea.
It's gonna be a family company.
It was going to be the four of us. Jeff would do the service, Greg would do the accounting, and Michelle and I would do the office work.
And by September 29th, 1993, when Greg and Michelle parked a moving van outside their newly rented townhouse after 18 months in Denver, everything appeared set for a happy homecoming.
I was extremely elated. I told him when I get off work, I said, I'll come over and help you unload the truck.
We couldn't wait to see him, get the place set up, get the business rolling.
In fact, Greg and Jeff were so eager to get started that the brothers were up half the night, unloading boxes and making plans.
We were having a blast, talking about the business plans, unloaded darn near almost all of the truck. We had a really, really good time.
Unfortunately, it would be the last time Jeff Williams would see his brother, because less than 24 hours after their reunion, Michelle would run out the front door of the townhouse, screaming that Greg had just been shot. Coming up, Michelle's father delivers some devastating news.
Talk to the doctor.
And Michelle's behavior takes a bizarre turn.
The mother's like, don't do that. What are you doing?
On the afternoon of September 30th, 1993, police in Columbus, Ohio were frantically searching a townhouse community on the city's affluent northwest side, hunting for the man who just shot Michelle Williams' husband, Greg.
Michelle described the intruder as being a white male, wearing some sort of tool belt. What she described sounded like somebody who might be a maintenance person.
According to Michelle, the intruder had burst into their new townhouse and shot her husband, who was napping on the couple's couch.
Shot him 3 times in the upper torso, and then fled out the back of the townhouse.
And according to what Michelle told the police, as the shooter fled out the back door, she had run out the front.
She ran outside and screamed for neighbors, and one of them called 911.
Within minutes, police and paramedics were on the scene.
Greg was still alive. They rushed him to the hospital.
And while the doctors fought to save Greg, the hunt for the shooter began.
We had detectives go door to door.
But the canvass produced little in the way of results.
No one could verify that this man was in the area.
Hoping for some answers, the investigators turned to the only witness they had, Michelle.
They took Michelle Williams downtown for what they call an informational interview, and her mother attended the session.
With her mother at her side in the interview room, Michelle told the investigators that when the intruder burst in, she was working in the kitchen while Greg napped on the couch, exhausted from unloading the moving van the evening before.
We are non-perishable food, and there's no start of our dishes. Mom's just making noise and like we're fine. And I just walked
Immediately you start wondering, well, what's the motive? Why did this happen?
Michelle said she had no idea, that she assumed the man had been out to rob them. But investigators said that sort of crime was highly unusual.
This doesn't occur.
It seemed very out of the ordinary.
And if the shooter had been a robber, it seemed he hadn't acted like one.
He took nothing, said nothing, just committed the act and immediately exited.
There had to be some other reason.
I remember asking her, can you think of any reason why anybody would want to hurt Greg? Why anybody would want to do this?
Michelle could only think of one possibility.
He likes to keep one funky. Have you ever known him to get that deep into debts?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He spent $1,000 on the sick boy a couple years back.
Once again, the investigators said that seemed unusual.
You'd have to run up a huge debt and for somebody to do something as serious as this.
The investigators were skeptical. But it didn't have anything to do with how much Greg supposedly owed, or the fact that nothing had been taken. Instead, it was the simple fact that the shooter had left Michelle completely unharmed.
How likely is it that we've got an intruder, a stranger, which is unusual in the first instance, coming through the front door, walking by a potential witness?
He did yell before he left. Do you remember? Okay. Well, it's by not doing anything, he possibly saved your life. If he had known you were there, and in my opinion, who knows what would have happened. He Millie didn't see you. That has to be the only thing I can think of.
Was she simply lucky to be alive, or was there another possibility? Since she had been at the scene, the police needed to rule her out as the shooter. And it would be pretty easy to do. In the interrogation room, the investigators told Michelle they wanted to test her hands for gunshot residue.
When you fire a weapon, it kicks back and it'll leave a telltale trace of powder and so forth on your hands.
The swabs of her hands would have to be sent off to the crime lab for analysis. But even before the results were in, the test could be revealing.
My request to have a gunshot residue test performed was really more to gauge her reaction to being tested. And maybe in that reaction, we might have a little bit more idea or direction about how involved is she in this.
Not that the investigators ever let on that they suspected she might be involved.
I said, I hate to have to ask you this, and it's difficult.
Dennis explains to her that we're just trying to eliminate potential suspects.
This is for you, more or less for your, how can I put this, for your own good.
Michelle agreed to the test, but when the investigators stepped out of the room for a moment, she started to worry.
She began wringing her hands and wiping her hands on a tissue that she had.
In fact, she became so frantic that even her mother took notice.
Her mother's like, don't do that. What are you doing?
What comes out of the barrel that counts. It's what comes out of the back of the gun and onto the person's hand. Stop. What if it, hangs in the air? You know, they always do that. It comes out of the person's hand.
And when the investigator and an evidence tech returned to the room, she shared her concerns with them, too.
She was saying things like, I touched his chest.
The investigators told her not to worry, though.
Well, believe me, there's a difference here between touching a shirt and having a gun in your hand and that gun going off.
But it smells like gunfire.
Once the investigators had reassured her, Michelle submitted to the test. And when it was over, her father arrived at the police station and stepped inside the interview room to deliver some devastating news about Greg.
Talk to the doctor. The doctor told me that he passed away.
The doctors did try hard to save him, but it was too late. He didn't make it through the procedure.
Michelle's father tried telling her more, too. But Michelle seemed to be in shock. Despite learning that her husband had just died, she kept talking about something else. The residue test.
I know, sweetheart.
For the investigators, Michelle's worry about the gunshot residue test was telling, and that led them to follow up with some pointed questions.
I asked her if she and Greg owned a gun. She told me no, that they didn't.
But then, when the investigator rephrased the question, Michelle admitted that while they never owned a gun, she had.
Have you ever purchased a handgun before? Yourself?
And if Michelle admitting that she had bought a gun before wasn't enough to get the investigators' attention, there was also her response to the follow-up question.
She hesitated. And it was one of those pauses, one of those hesitations that, as you're looking at the person, you could see that they're kind of working things out in their head.
Eventually, Michelle came up with an answer.
Couple months ago.
Michelle said she had bought the gun in Colorado for protection.
I did not like the area where we're living in now.
However, according to Michelle, she hadn't brought the gun with her when she and Greg moved home to Columbus.
I was away, and I went to Fenway.
It seemed very odd that you would buy a gun and then just a few weeks throw it away.
The investigator didn't press any further, though. Instead, he informed Michelle that she couldn't go home just yet, that the crime scene unit was going to be busy for a while.
Obviously, we went to search the apartment to look for any evidence.
And then he wrapped up the interview and let her go.
You would be staying at your parents' place?
But while Michelle may have told the investigators that she was going to her parents' place, that wasn't where she went once the interview was over.
Within minutes, we get a call from patrol telling us that Michelle Williams had arrived back at the scene, that she was very upset, and that she was demanding to get back into the townhouse.
Coming up, police discover why Michelle wants back into her townhouse.
I heard behind me one of them say, "You're not going to believe this."
And a possible motive is revealed.
Police found what they would call a love letter.
By sundown on September 30th, 1993, it had been less than 6 hours since Michelle Williams' husband, 30-year-old Greg Williams, had been gunned down in their Columbus, Ohio townhouse. According to 23-year-old Michelle, an intruder had shot him, but the police were skeptical.
The story itself really raised tremendous doubts in the detectives' minds whether she was being honest.
To think that somebody would randomly come in and kill Greg, it just didn't make sense at all.
And when the investigators requested that Michelle have her hands tested for gunshot residue, her response had only deepened those suspicions.
She seemed to want to explain over and over again why we might find gunshot residue on her hands.
The results of the test would take time to analyze. But in the interim, Michelle did something else to raise the investigators' suspicions. Despite being told that it would be some time before the crime scene investigators could allow her access to the couple's townhouse, she had turned up at the complex after her interview and demanded to get inside.
She said she needed to check on her cats.
But the patrol officers posted outside the crime scene tape refused to stand aside.
The patrol officers tell her that we weren't going to release the scene until it was properly processed. She seemed very upset when she was told that she couldn't re-enter the townhouse.
Was the new widow really upset about her cats? Or was there another reason she wanted back inside the townhouse? The investigators were determined to find out.
We started going through the house, inch by inch.
From top to bottom, for anything related to the shooting.
And it wasn't too long before they found exactly what they were looking for.
The crime scene search unit were going through a pretty large box on the second floor in one of the bedrooms, when all of a sudden I heard behind me one of them say, "You're not going to believe this."
It was a gun, tucked inside a drawstring bag and stuffed down in a box of clothing.
It didn't look like it had been carefully packed.
Also in that ditty bag was some ammunition. It was a box of 50, of which 6 or 7 of the rounds were missing out of the box.
It was an interesting find, considering what Michelle had claimed in her interview.
Michelle Williams had already told us, first, that they didn't own a gun. Then she told us that she had purchased a gun, but that she had thrown this gun away
Clearly, she hadn't thrown it away, but was it possible that she had actually handled it quite recently? Downstairs in the living room, the investigators found what appeared to be Michelle's purse.
We found her ID and miscellaneous other things.
But that wasn't all they found.
In Michelle's purse, we found some spent shell casings.
Even more surprising, among the clutter of old receipts in the bottom of Michelle's purse was one from a Colorado gun shop.
And the receipt described the firearm that we had found in the search.
And it was dated September 15th, barely 2 weeks before the shooting. If the bullets that killed Greg could be matched to the gun they found upstairs, the police would have a murder weapon and a paper trail tying it to Michelle. But incredibly, that still wasn't all that rummaging through her purse had revealed to the investigators.
They found a love letter to a man back in Colorado.
Was it a possible motive? One thing was certain. If what Michelle wrote in the letter was true, it sounded as if she had been having an affair.
Michelle Williams described their first kiss and romantic interludes back in Colorado.
It talked about things that Michelle and this person might do at some point in the future.
About taking a trip to Paris with this man.
Signed with all my heart. It was dated September 29th, the night before the shooting.
That means that she's writing a letter to a boyfriend while my brother and I were unpacking the truck.
The letter, the gun, the bullet casings in her purse. Taken alongside Michelle's bizarre reaction to the gunshot residue test. It all added up to one thing as far as the investigators were concerned.
We believed after the first night, after the search, that we knew who our killer was.
But there was still one wild card in play.
Michelle's letter was an aspect that had to be explored. We didn't know if we just had one person involved.
Was the boyfriend back in Colorado a co-conspirator, as well as a possible motive? There was only one way to find out.
Police knew they had to go to Colorado to interview this person.
So on October 3rd, the investigators from Columbus traveled to Colorado and tracked down the man in the letter. An employee of the company where Michelle had been a human resources clerk. He appeared truly shocked that Greg was dead, and just as surprised to find out that Michelle had feelings for him.
He was shocked that Michelle thought about him in this way.
According to her coworker, there was no affair, because Michelle wanted something far more serious than he was interested in.
You know, he was just looking more for a one-night stand where she was in her own little world there, thinking it was a lot more to it than it was.
Any romantic relationship was more in her head than in reality.
And despite all the passion Michelle had poured into her letter about trips to Paris and their future together, the coworker explained that at most, he and Michelle had flirted.
A little bit at work and after work in some social settings.
The kiss Michelle described in her letter had occurred, but the coworker claimed that was essentially all that had happened between them.
He said that any romantic contact that they had was very limited.
So why had Michelle concocted such an elaborate fantasy? According to her coworker, Greg's focus on his career had left her feeling more than a little neglected.
She had told him that she was unhappy with her marriage because Greg was not giving the attention that she needed.
That, you know, he didn't spend much time with her, but in reality, Greg did everything he could to please Michelle.
Had Michelle's unhappiness resulted in Greg's murder? Her former coworker said he had no idea, and the investigators believed him.
Based on our interview with him and his willingness to continue answering questions, we ruled him out as having been involved.
However, while the trip to Colorado didn't yield any new suspects, it wasn't a total bust. When investigators from Columbus checked out the gun shop listed on the receipt from Michelle's purse, the owner positively identified her as the person who had purchased the gun.
She purchased the weapon, and she had given some excuse. You know, we're concerned about her safety. We're new to the area. I don't know a lot about guns. I like to have something that's easy to operate.
But the real break came when the investigators met with Greg's former employers in Denver and informed them that he was dead.
They couldn't believe it. They were stunned.
And they had information about Greg that was just as stunning for the investigators. As it turned out, the 30-year-old newlywed had a substantial life insurance policy through the company.
It was for $210,000. And then because of the way he died, there was an additional policy for $100,000 for accidental death.
Even more interesting, while Greg had recently quit the company, the policy was still in effect.
The policy said it's in effect as long as you work here, but when you leave, if you ever do leave, it expires the last day of the month that you leave.
And Greg was murdered on September 30th.
The insurance policy was due to expire at midnight on the day when Greg was killed.
And there was only one person who could benefit from his death, his 23-year-old widow.
Michelle Williams was the sole beneficiary.
Coming up, the investigators uncover shocking new evidence.
When I heard the title, I couldn't believe it.
And Michelle feels the heat.
She fainted in an officer's arms.
By October 6, 1993, Michelle Williams' husband Greg had been dead for a week. He had been shot in the couple's Columbus, Ohio townhouse, supposedly by a mysterious intruder.
Michelle Williams told police that a maintenance man wearing a tool belt came in through the front door and shot her husband and then ran out the back door.
That's what the 23-year-old widow said, but the police didn't buy her story.
We ruled out this idea that there was this psycho maintenance man.
Instead, they had amassed a pile of evidence that pointed to Michelle as the shooter.
Michelle Williams left the gun in the apartment. She left shell casings from the shooting in her purse.
The police had also found a copy of a love letter written to a man back in Colorado and uncovered details about Greg's $300,000 life insurance policy.
It appeared that her motive was to cash in on Greg's expiring life insurance policy, trying to move back to Colorado to obtain a relationship with this man.
But the clincher had come on October 4th, when the investigators received the test results from the crime lab. First, there were the ballistics results on the gun the investigators had found hidden in the couple's townhouse.
It was the weapon that killed her husband.
And as the police had already determined, it was also the weapon she had purchased a mere 2 weeks before the murder.
It was traced back to Colorado when it had been purchased by her.
But most damning of all, the gunshot residue test of Michelle's hands had come back positive.
She'd fired a gun. All the other stuff that, from the insurance policy to the letter and so forth, just kind of icing on the cake, so to speak.
We knew that Michelle was the one who was involved in the killing, and that there wasn't some stranger, as she had described, who had come in, killed Greg, and was still at large.
And Michelle wouldn't be at large much longer either. On October 6th, the Columbus police pulled up outside her parents' house, where she had been staying since the shooting.
A little more than a week since the killing had occurred, we made the decision that we had enough to bring charges against Michelle Williams.
And by the time the police knocked on her parents' door, the front yard was crowded with reporters and camera crews.
It was intense media coverage. We had a femme fatale charged with murder here in her hometown.
We went in, explained to Michelle and her parents why we were there, that she was being charged with the murder of her husband, and that we were taking her into custody.
Although considering the gravity of the situation, Michelle seemed strangely nonchalant.
She was smiling. At one point, she even made a joke.
And it came just as she was being cuffed.
The patrol sergeant, he was placing the cuffs on her and getting ready to lead her out, asking her if she had anything on her that she would like to leave with her parents, and she smiled and joked and laughed and said, "You can leave me with my parents."
But the laughter stopped as soon as the police opened the door and led Michelle out before the gauntlet of cameras on the lawn.
She saw all the reporters descending on the house, and at that point she fainted in the patrol officer's arms.
The police were pretty much carrying her out of the house.
And then when she was hauled in at the police station in front of even more cameras.
She fainted in an officer's arms, on camera, almost on cue. When the camera would be on her, she would automatically just go limp and faint.
I know the police and most people around it thought it was fake, it was all for show.
When Michelle was arrested for her husband's murder, Greg's family was genuinely shocked.
Our reaction when she was arrested was, they got the wrong person. This is my sister-in-law. I was very close with her. My wife was very close with her. How would any family feel?
We had no idea that they were even looking at Michelle. We couldn't understand why they'd arrested her when the real killer was still out there.
But by October 15th, when the grand jury indicted Michelle for aggravated murder and revealed what the police had found, Greg's family was finally convinced that they had arrested the right person.
When the evidence finally came out, I was speechless.
I felt extremely betrayed by Michelle. Greg had just moved back. We had plans for the business to start up soon. Everything was going along just as planned, exactly how we had dreamed.
However, despite the overwhelming evidence against her, Michelle insisted she was innocent. At her arraignment, she pleaded not guilty and appeared determined to take her case to trial, no matter the risk.
She was indicted for aggravated murder, which carried a mandatory sentence of anywhere from 20 to 30 years to life imprisonment.
And then, after posting bail, she walked out of the county jail where the cameras were waiting once again. Only this time, she didn't faint. With Michelle's arrest and indictment in the news, there was no shortage of reaction about the case.
There was a great deal of sympathy for Greg and his family.
And as the prosecutors prepared to take her case to trial, there was a shocking new piece of evidence too, one that would make Michelle's defense an uphill battle. That November, as the police and prosecutors firmed up their case, Michelle's old boss in Colorado contacted them.
She said, "We received a piece of mail, and it just seems very strange."
Addressed to Michelle, it was a catalog from a company called Paladin Press.
Paladin Press had some involvement in publishing Soldier of Fortune magazine and other books and periodicals that were directed at the survivalist crowd.
What was Michelle doing with a survivalist catalog? When the investigators contacted the company, they found out that she had ordered something from them before.
She had purchased a book from them called The Death Dealer's Manual.
It was a how-to manual for murder.
When I heard the title, I couldn't believe it.
Even more incredible, she had ordered the book several months before Greg's death.
She had been planning that out months and months in advance.
If there is a proverbial nail in the coffin, in my mind, this might have been it.
Michelle's attorneys apparently thought so too. In early 1994, as Michelle's trial date drew near, they approached the prosecutors looking to cut a deal.
They came to me and offered to plead to a manslaughter conviction.
However, since the penalty for manslaughter was only 7 to 25 years in prison, the offer didn't sit too well with Greg's family.
We definitely said, no, we're not going to plead to a manslaughter case.
I summarily rejected it.
And the defense made a counter-offer just as quickly.
They came back and said to me, we are willing to plead to murder.
Just murder, however, not the aggravated murder charge that Michelle faced.
Aggravated murder carried 20 years to life, where the murder charge carried 15 to life.
The deal was acceptable to the prosecutors, but they deferred to Greg's family for the final decision. Take the 15 to life, or hold out for 20 and take the case to trial.
Could we lose? Certainly. Do I think it's possible? No. However, you never know with a jury.
Coming up, when Greg's family comes to a decision, Michelle stuns the court.
You never know
goes on behind somebody else's closed doors.
By the spring of 1994, the attorneys for Michelle Williams were in an admittedly tight spot. Based on the amount of evidence the prosecutors had amassed, there was a good chance that if her case went to trial, the 24-year-old would be found guilty of murdering her husband, Greg.
I don't think they had anything to work with in this case. The facts were just overwhelming.
So with her trial date drawing near, her attorneys had approached the prosecution, informing them that Michelle would be willing to plead guilty to murder in exchange for a sentence of 15 years to life.
It's not aggravated murder, but it's a for sure win that she's going to be going away for a long time.
And rather than go through the stress of a trial, Greg's family agreed to the deal. So on May 12, 1994, Michelle Williams entered her guilty plea before a packed courtroom.
Seeing her again after not seeing her for so many months, it was a shock.
After admitting her guilt, Michelle apologized for what she had done.
I would like to say I am sorry.
Not that Greg's family believed her.
She showed zero remorse. Never once looked on our side over at the family.
She didn't ask them to forgive her either.
God has already forgiven me, and someday, somehow, maybe I could prevent someone else from making the same mistakes that I made.
But what took everyone by surprise was a cryptic remark Michelle made hinting that Greg somehow shared the blame for her mistakes.
You never know what goes on behind somebody else's closed doors.
She was implying or suggesting that there had been some sort of abuse.
We were all shocked.
They knew it wasn't true, but they were still upset.
And even today, after more than 20 years, the family still struggles to understand how Michelle could look down on her husband as he slept and calmly, coldly pull the trigger.
To this day, just shocked that a person like her, a girl that had a lot going on for her, was capable to be able to do something as heinous and cruel as this.
Cheyenne and Billy Bratcher appeared to be a happy young couple.
They got along very well.
You're just perfect.
But when Cheyenne's husband mysteriously disappeared during a fishing trip,
His parents started making claims.
They said, "You don't think this was an accident?" And I said, "Absolutely not."
and even with no proof,
There was no direct evidence.
the accusations kept flying.
They murdered our son.
Was it simply a grieving family in denial?
Listen, he drowned. You need to accept that.
Or was Cheyenne really a cold-blooded killer?
We knew what happened. It was just a matter of figuring out how to prove it.
April 9th, 1994, Lake Meredith, Texas. It was a cool spring night on this popular boating destination, a national recreation area 30 miles north of Amarillo.
It's a good-sized lake, and there's lots of coves and stuff and places you can fish.
But on this particular Saturday, there had been trouble on the water. At 2:45 a.m., a woman named Brenda Fine called 911 and reported that her son-in-law, 26-year-old Billy Dean Bratcher, had fallen into the lake and disappeared.
They said that it was an accident.
Rangers from the National Park Service responded to the call. Within minutes, they arrived at the lakeside campsite where Brenda and her daughter, 21-year-old Cheyenne Bratcher, Billy's wife, were waiting with Cheyenne's brother, Tommy. As Brenda explained to the Rangers, they'd all come out to the lake earlier that evening for an overnight fishing trip.
They went down there and was having a real good time, and it was a beautiful night, Brenda said.
But at around 11:30, Tommy and Billy had gone out to check on some trunk lines.
They went out on a approximately 9.5-foot inflatable rubber raft.
Tommy admitted it had been foolish, given the tricky conditions that often prevailed on the lake.
We've been known to have gale force winds, and it's a very dangerous lake to be on. When those winds hit you, you're going to be in big trouble.
And according to Tommy, that was precisely what happened. He told the Rangers that he and Billy had been heading back to shore around midnight when, without warning, the wind had picked up and suddenly shifted.
The water was choppy. There were waves from a foot to a foot and a half.
And according to Tommy, Billy had gone over the side.
I guess because he had been drinking quite a bit.
Tommy said he had searched for Billy for more than an hour before reluctantly returning to shore.
He tried a long time but never could see him.
And when Tommy got back to shore, the family had decided to notify the authorities and report Billy missing.
Brenda drove to a nearby convenience store. When she got there, she called 911.
Although by then, if he'd been in the water since midnight, there was a good chance that Billy was more than just missing.
The water temperature was in the 40s.
It takes between 2 and 3 minutes to start to black in and out with consciousness.
Fearing that Billy may have already fallen prey to hypothermia, the Rangers asked Tommy to show them where the accident occurred.
They had actually taken Tommy back out on the lake in their boat and had been searching for Billy Dean.
But it was dark and the water was still rough. After about an hour, the Rangers were forced to return to where Cheyenne waited for her husband and inform her that he wasn't just missing. He was most likely dead. And now it was up to the investigators to determine, was his disappearance simply a tragic accident, or was it something else? Born in 1972 and raised in Amarillo, Texas, money was tight for most of Cheyenne Fine's childhood, but so was her family.
This certainly wasn't a Beaver Cleaver family, but there was certainly a strong bond between the parents and the children.
But while Cheyenne lacked expensive toys or designer clothes, that rarely mattered, according to her grandmother.
She laughed and had a lot of fun. She loved life, and she just was a happy person.
She's always smiling, has a big heart, and you can kind of tell that right off.
And that's apparently what Billy Dean Bratcher thought when he met 16-year-old Cheyenne in 1988. Four years older than Cheyenne, Billy also had a big heart.
He was very considerate of other kids. He was just a wonderful young man. He had a lot of compassion for other people.
And much like Cheyenne, he came from a tight-knit Texas family.
It was very important to me that my family be close, and I wanted us to all love one another and respect one another.
But there was one big difference between Cheyenne and Billy. Money. Billy's father owned a successful heating and plumbing business, and the family lived comfortably.
We were by no means wealthy. We were just middle-class people. But we did have a privileged childhood compared to Cheyenne and her family.
Not that Billy was spoiled by any means. After high school, he joined the family business and went straight to work.
He got up and he worked hard, and he worked until the job was done. And he worked 5-6 days a week.
The customers loved Billy.
And Cheyenne appeared impressed with him too.
Billy Dean was a very fit young man. He didn't work out because he worked so hard, and he worked long hours.
In fact, Billy met Cheyenne on a job. He was helping renovate a house, and the teenager was a friend of the homeowner's daughter.
She was down there, and he became acquainted with her, and he asked her out.
Cheyenne said yes, but the relationship had barely started before it caught the watchful eye of Cheyenne's mother, Brenda.
Brenda has always been, how would you say, controlling?
And in this instance, Brenda may have had cause for concern. Her 16-year-old daughter was dating a man who'd recently turned 20. Although rather than forbid her to see him, Brenda decided to check up on him first.
Brenda came over to meet me, and she came over saying she wanted to meet who her daughter was dating.
And since Brenda gave the match her blessing, she must have gone home impressed. Although as pleased as she was that Cheyenne had hooked up with a hard-working young man who stood to someday inherit his family's business, Brenda's excitement came to a sudden end when she came home one night and caught her underage daughter in bed with Billy. Furious, Brenda had phoned Billy's mother, who was far less incensed by the incident.
I said, "What do you expect at their age?"
And what happened next probably shouldn't have surprised anyone. After only a few months of dating, Cheyenne became pregnant. Once again, Brenda appeared livid.
She said, I could bring rape charges against him. She was not of age. And I said, yes, but I would hate for you to do that.
In the end, no charges were filed because Billy stepped up and proposed. Cheyenne immediately said yes.
She loved this guy. And so we went on and planned the wedding.
They had a big wedding. They got married in the church that we grew up in and that we were baptized in.
Married in September of 1989, it looked as if the couple had overcome their rocky start.
They were very happy, acting silly.
They got along very well.
He was just perfect, and she loved him very much.
And then, 7 months after the wedding, Cheyenne gave birth to a daughter, Brianna.
Brianna was the first grandchild on both sides. Brianna was very, very well loved.
The fact that Cheyenne had given her a grandchild also brought Gail and her new daughter-in-law closer together.
I really tried my very best to be another mother to her, and I wanted to be a good example for her.
And the ties between daughter and mother-in-law became even closer a year later, when Cheyenne announced that she was pregnant again.
I said, we'll love this baby as much as we love Brianna, and we will make sure that he has a happy life just like Brianna.
Born in the fall of 1991, Tanner Bratcher was practically a carbon copy of his father.
I'd say there's some pretty good resemblance between my dad and I.
And by then, it appeared that the couple had put their shaky shotgun wedding well behind them.
She loved Billy. She had 2 children, 2 beautiful children by him.
Everything was running pretty smooth.
It wasn't perfect, though. Although Cheyenne was able to stay home and raise the children, she and Billy still faced the same challenges as most young families.
They lived paycheck to paycheck.
Luckily, they did have Billy's family to fall back on. Not only did they build a house on land his family owned, they also took frequent advantage of the family's vacation home on Lake Meredith.
We had built a place there for our children.
We did family vacations, just hung out and did stuff on the weekends sometimes.
And whether it was a quick weekend or a week in the summer, no one in the family enjoyed their time on the water more than Billy.
He loved the lake, he loved fishing.
But in April of 1994, after almost 5 years of marriage, it appeared that Billy's love of fishing just might have cost him his life. Coming up, is Billy's disappearance an accident?
It's nothing uncommon for somebody to drown up there.
Or will a mother's instinct turn out to be right?
I said, oh my God, they had murdered our son.
By sunrise on April 9th, 1994, It had been a little more than 3 hours since Brenda Fine had called 911 and reported her son-in-law missing. 26-year-old Billy Dean Bratcher had disappeared somewhere in the dark waters of Lake Meredith, a national recreation area 30 miles north of Amarillo, Texas.
Brenda Fine, Cheyenne Bratcher, Billy Bratcher, and Tommy Fine had all met at Lake Meredith to just go fishing, to just spend a quiet evening relaxing at the lake.
But their relaxing evening had apparently taken a disastrous turn just before midnight, when Billy had gone out on the lake to check some trunk lines with his brother-in-law, Tommy.
Billy fell out of the boat.
Neither Tommy nor the park rangers had been able to locate Billy that night, and with the approach of daylight, hope that he had survived was fading fast.
It's not uncommon for somebody to drown up there every year or so.
But there was still a slim chance that he had survived. As the sun came up, a full search and rescue mission got underway with boats and deputies from local law enforcement, as well as rangers from the National Park Service.
They're going to look for him. Maybe he got to the side.
My brother was a very strong swimmer. He was in very good physical condition because of his manual labor job, so it could actually take quite a while for him to drown.
The searchers weren't the only ones determined to find Billy either. As the boats began to pull away from the shore, the rangers and deputies had to physically restrain the missing man's wife, Cheyenne Bratcher. Tears streaming, the 21-year-old begged to go on the hunt for Billy, her husband of nearly 5 years and the father of her 2 children.
He was a good man. Cheyenne loved him.
Well aware that they stood a good chance of finding Billy's body floating in the water that morning, the searchers eventually convinced Cheyenne to stay behind with her family. Then, they fanned out across the lake, some searching the water while others prowled along the shore, both looking for Billy and checking in with other campers. One of them was Charlie Phillips, who had been coming to Lake Meredith to fish for years.
I was fixing breakfast and somebody knocked on the door of the motorhome, and I went to the door and it was a forest ranger.
When the ranger asked if Charlie had seen Billy or anyone out on the lake late that night, he said no. But the fisherman did mention something that appeared to confirm Tommy's account of a sudden change in the wind at around midnight.
This wind hit all of a sudden. I thought that the wind was going to blow us off in the lake.
In fact, when the ranger explained why he was asking if Charlie had seen anything unusual that night, the veteran fisherman said he was surprised anyone in such a tiny boat had survived the sudden gale.
It's a wonder that both of those kids didn't drown in that rubber raft that they were in.
And as Cheyenne, her mother, and brother all explained at the ranger station that morning, Billy had been drinking that night, heavily. In fact, Cheyenne told the rangers that Billy had started drinking that afternoon, well before they got to the lake.
She drove him there because, he was over the limit to drive.
Based on what the rangers had learned about Billy's drinking and the wild weather that night, it was looking as if his disappearance was just what Cheyenne's brother claimed, an accident. But that wasn't how everyone saw it. Not long after the rangers sent Cheyenne home, Billy's family arrived at the station and started making accusations. According to Billy's mother, when she first learned of her son's disappearance at around 5:30 that morning, she had known exactly what had happened.
I turned right then and I looked at my husband and I said, "Oh my God, they have murdered our son."
The rangers were taken aback by the accusation.
The ranger said, "Why do you think this is murder?" I said he would never have been to the lake with Brenda and Tommy.
They fought all the time. Brenda hated my brother.
In fact, Billy's sister told the rangers she had even witnessed one fight in December of 1993, 5 months before Billy's disappearance.
Billy Dean called me and said, "Can you come and get my kids?"
Billy's sister said she had agreed, and that when she arrived at Billy and Cheyenne's house a few minutes later, she walked into the middle of a chaotic situation.
There's cops there. Brenda's laying in the floor, screaming that her back was hurting.
And Billy had been in handcuffs. said she wasn't sure what the fight had been about.
Anytime Brenda was around, there was problems.
But according to what Billy told her, it hadn't been his fault.
He said she had hit him, and he pushed her and told her to leave the house. And she said no, and so he pushed her out the door. She slipped and fell, and supposedly hurt her back.
No charges had been filed, according to the family. But as Gail Bratcher explained to the investigators, friction with his mother-in-law wasn't the worst of Billy's problems. Based on what she'd heard from her son, his marriage was falling apart.
He said we just can't get along anymore.
And according to Billy, Cheyenne was the aggressor.
My brother did share with me that she's just not a nice person.
He said she attacks me all the time.
Especially when he had been drinking, which, as his family admitted, was pretty much all the time, too.
My brother was a drinker, a long-term drinker, a functional alcoholic.
Although, according to Billy's mother, alcohol was all that he abused. In fact, she claimed that he didn't even fight back when Cheyenne attacked him.
He said, I hold her hands down so she can't attack me. I said, do you hit back? He said, no, ma'am, I don't.
However, Billy's mother did say that her son had eventually become fed up with Cheyenne's behavior. In fact, she said that he had even been contemplating divorce.
He said, I just don't know how much longer I can handle this.
Gail told the Rangers that she had urged her son to try and work things out.
I said, you have a baby daughter and a baby son. You're going to have to stick it out.
But as soon as she heard that Billy had disappeared, Gail said she had realized her advice had been a tragic mistake.
First words out of her mouth were, my God, they've killed him. And I really trust a mother's instinct.
I just knew. I just knew.
The Rangers required more than a mother's instinct, however, especially since all the other evidence pointed towards an accident.
At night, it's dark. Billy Bratcher's inebriated. It was pretty choppy. That's a very plausible explanation for what happened.
The superintendent of the park rangers, he's like, ma'am, he was drunk. He drowned. You need to accept that.
And before a murder investigation could even begin, the authorities would need evidence and a body. Coming up, Billy's family stumbles upon a possible motive.
It's doubled if it's an accident.
But will the authorities listen?
He told me, get over it.
April 13th, 1994. It had been 4 days since Billy Bratcher had disappeared beneath the waters of Lake Meredith, Texas, the victim of what the authorities believed to be a boating accident.
They just maintained the fact that, he was drunk.
Billy's family refused to accept that explanation, however.
His parents started making claims that they just didn't believe this could have happened, that there must have been foul play afoot.
And his mother was adamant that Billy's wife, 21-year-old Cheyenne Bratcher, was behind it.
She's like, she killed my son. I'm telling you, she killed my son.
For starters, Billy's family claimed that the couple's 5-year marriage was on the rocks.
Things had not been right for a while.
According to the family, the circumstances surrounding Billy's disappearance were suspicious too. They claimed that despite his love of fishing, it was highly unlikely that Billy would ever go to the lake with Cheyenne's mother, 43-year-old Brenda Fine, and Cheyenne's 25-year-old brother, Tommy.
There was no way my brother would be out at Lake Meredith with Tommy, Cheyenne, and Brenda. He could not stand Brenda.
It's just so improbable that they're having a family get-together. They didn't even like each other.
And according to Billy's mother, Gail, that could only mean one thing. The whole trip was a setup.
They tricked him. They tricked Billy Dean into going to the lake.
The result was a twofold investigation. The park rangers focused their efforts on finding the missing man.
They bring in the helicopters and the dogs, and they do foot patrols, they do boat patrols.
And the FBI looked into Gail Bratcher's suspicion that her son had been murdered.
This became a federal case because it happened on Lake Meredith, which is federal property.
Brought in for additional questioning, Cheyenne's brother Tommy told FBI agents exactly what he'd told the park rangers about Billy's disappearance.
He said it was just real choppy out there, and he fell in.
Tommy Fine was very consistent in his statements about what happened, that this was an accident.
The FBI agents also spoke to Cheyenne about her husband's disappearance. During the interview, she admitted that the couple's marriage was in trouble and that it had been her idea to go fishing. But according to Cheyenne, the fishing trip had been an attempt to save her marriage, no matter what her mother-in-law suspected.
The story was they were having trouble with their marriage, and she said, well, honey, let's just go down there and throw a few poles in and fish off the bank and talk about our problems.
Tommy and Cheyenne's statements were enough to placate the FBI, but not Billy's family. And as the search for Billy's body dragged on, the family found a new reason to suspect Cheyenne. Despite the fact that her husband was still missing, she started making plans for his funeral. According to Billy's mother, Cheyenne had claimed she was simply doing what she'd been told.
She had come to us and told us that the Rangers told her she needed to go ahead and make funeral arrangements.
But Billy's mother said she had grown increasingly suspicious of her daughter-in-law while at the funeral home, especially when she and Cheyenne started discussing how to pay for the funeral.
I said, Cheyenne, did Billy have any insurance?
Cheyenne said, a little bit. And Mom goes, well, how much do you have?
And according to Gail Bratcher, she had been floored by Cheyenne's answer.
She goes, $250,000.
I jumped up and I said, what? I don't have that much on my husband.
That wasn't all either. Put on the spot by her mother-in-law, Cheyenne reluctantly admitted that the policy had a double indemnity clause.
It's doubled if it's an accident.
Had Cheyenne somehow killed Billy in order to collect a $500,000 payout? A quick phone call to Billy's insurance company left his mother convinced.
The policy went into effect about 6 days before Billy was drowned.
However, before the family could contact the FBI and pass along what they had learned, they received the news that they had long dreaded. On April 19, 1994, 10 days after he disappeared, the search parties finally located Billy's body.
It was a good while before it surfaced.
Floating about 150 yards offshore, Billy was wearing only a shirt and underwear, a detail that suggested he had at least tried to swim for it.
To swim ashore, you better get out of those heavy clothes.
But did that mean he'd simply fallen in, as Cheyenne's brother claimed? Or had he been forced into the water, as his family suspected? The autopsy revealed no visible injuries and no indication of a struggle.
No evidence whatsoever. No signs of foul play.
Instead, the autopsy determined that Billy had drowned.
His lungs were full of fluid.
Another autopsy finding even suggested why he had drowned. Billy's blood alcohol level was 0.19, twice the legal limit.
Someone that inebriated would not have been able to swim.
The official conclusion? Billy's death was ruled an accident.
Nobody believed that this was actually foul play?
Nobody but Billy's family, that is. Despite the autopsy findings, they pressed the FBI to continue looking into the timing of Billy's insurance policy. But it was no use.
We couldn't get anyone to listen to us.
In fact, Billy's mother claims that one federal agent all but told her off over the phone.
I was trying to tell him my son was murdered. I have this evidence. And he told me, you're an irate, angry mother. Get over it. I will never forget those words.
And by early August 1994, 4 months after Billy Bratcher in Lake Meredith. The FBI officially closed the investigation.
There was no direct evidence.
They didn't have enough to prosecute.
Billy's family wasn't about to give up, however. Soon after the FBI dropped the case, the family hired a lawyer.
We believe we knew what happened. It was just a matter of figuring out how to prove it.
What they needed was someone on the inside. And it wasn't long before the family's lawyer identified a prospect. Tommy's longtime girlfriend, Susie Tolbert.
Susie Tolbert worked at the Caravan Club. It's a country and western bar, dance hall.
For the next several months, the family's lawyer tried to ingratiate himself with Susie.
He would come in and talk with her.
But once he explained why he was there, that he was representing Billy's family, the friendly waitress turned frosty.
She was going to keep herself out of trouble and wasn't going to talk.
The lawyer persisted, however.
She was kind of rough around the edges, but my impression of her is that she was decent and that she knew what happened.
And that made her vulnerable, according to what the lawyer repeatedly told Susie.
I said, they've killed one in-law, and I think that you're at risk, because if they decide that you're the only one that would sink their ship, then I don't think they'd hesitate to kill you.
Finally, after many weeks of effort, the strategy started to pay off. Although at first, Susie would only hint that Tommy was somehow involved in Billy's death.
Susie told me that she really didn't want to essentially rat on the father of her kids.
Convinced that Susie was about to crack, the lawyer and Billy's family did their best to sweeten the deal.
There were a lot of promises made to her, according to what she said, and that the Bratchers and Mr. Wittenberg had told her that, if this all got resolved, they would make sure that she and her children could have the house that Cheyenne and Billy Bratcher had been residing in.
Thanks to the promises from Billy's family, Susie came around. Although she still stopped short of ratting on Tommy. Instead, she told Tommy that Billy's family was putting pressure on the authorities and that he should turn himself in before it was too late.
She started talking to Tommy about, listen, you could wind up getting the death penalty. You need to help solve this.
And on January 17, 1995, after months of pressure, Tommy finally caved.
He called the FBI and said he wanted to meet with him.
And as it turned out, he didn't just want to meet. He wanted to turn himself in for Billy's murder.
And he wrote out his confession to the FBI agents.
Tommy believed that was what he needed to do to keep Suzanne and his children provided for.
In his statement, Tommy did far more than confess to killing Billy, however. He also implicated Cheyenne and their mother as the crime's true masterminds. According to Tommy, Billy's family had been right all along. His mother and sister had killed Billy for the insurance money. In fact, he claimed they'd promised him a cut if he helped.
Tommy's position was that he was promised $25,000 from the insurance proceeds if he would cause the drowning of Billy Bratcher.
After Tommy confessed, the FBI placed him under arrest for murder. And then prosecutors had worked out a deal to secure Tommy's testimony against his sister and his mother. And in April of 1995, almost exactly 1 year after Billy first disappeared, Brenda and Cheyenne were indicted for his murder.
She was already a grieving wife and mother, and yes, she was just stunned when this came about. She was very shocked.
Coming up, Tommy delivers a horrifying account of Billy's last moments.
He'd made sure he drowned.
And he reveals his family's shocking secret.
Brenda was a one-woman crime wave.
23, 1995, 23-year-old Cheyenne Bratcher and her 44-year-old mother, Brenda Fine, stood trial at the U.S. District Courthouse in Amarillo, Texas. Mother and daughter both faced life in prison, accused of murder, conspiracy, and insurance fraud charges related to the death of Cheyenne's husband, Billy Bratcher. In April of 1994, he had mysteriously disappeared during what was originally ruled to be a boating accident, a finding Billy's family never believed.
We all knew immediately he was dead and they were responsible.
And in January of 1995, Cheyenne's brother Tommy had confirmed those suspicions, confessing that his mother and sister had convinced him to push Billy off the boat in exchange for part of the life insurance proceeds.
Without his testimony, they would have never been able to return an indictment against Brenda or Cheyenne.
In its open, the prosecution told jurors that not only had Cheyenne and Billy's marriage been in trouble, she had stood to gain $500,000 in life insurance policy if his death was ruled accidental.
It was the most expedient way to get him out of her life, gain the most sympathy, make herself a widow, and get money in the process.
And Cheyenne's brother Tommy was willing to testify to it, too.
He's led to believe that he's going to spend maybe a couple years locked up.
On the stand, the 27-year-old began by letting the jurors in on a family secret. According to Tommy, Billy's death was hardly the first time his family had committed insurance fraud.
Insurance fraud was a way of life.
In fact, Tommy testified that his mother had been ripping off insurance companies for as long as he could remember.
Brenda was a one-woman crime wave.
And according to Tommy, he and Cheyenne had been her accomplices since childhood.
Those kids were dominated by Brenda. They never stood a chance.
Tommy testified that the schemes, for the most part, had been small time, a few $1,000s here and there.
I'll admit, some highly questionable claims were made in regards to vehicle thefts, hit and runs, stolen vehicles.
But according to Tommy, as Cheyenne's marriage fell apart, she and their mother decided to go for a far bigger payoff: Billy's life insurance.
The government's position in this case was that Brenda Fine and Cheyenne then enlisted the assistance of Tommy Fine to actually commit the murder.
According to Tommy, Cheyenne had secured his cooperation by promising him $25,000 from the insurance proceeds. And once he had signed on, they had come up with a plan, one that was already well underway when Cheyenne drove her already tipsy husband to the lake on the evening of April 8th, 1994.
Brenda and Tommy were already there, had a little campfire.
As soon as Billy arrived, Cheyenne supposedly produced a bottle of whiskey she had brought along for the occasion.
She had proceeded to get him drunk.
On the stand, Tommy described how he had taken his, by then, seriously intoxicated brother-in-law out in the boat.
Tommy was very emotional. He was very apologetic.
And considering how much Billy had to drink, Tommy said it wasn't long before he saw an opportunity and took it.
Billy Dean stands up to urinate to relieve himself.
And when he did, he gunned the motor on the boat.
And finally, after several minutes of floundering, Billy went under and never came up.
He made sure he drowned.
That's just a pretty graphic deal.
On cross-examination, the defense attacked Tommy for changing his story, claiming he had been pressured into it by his girlfriend, Susie Tolbert.
It was clear that but for her pressure, Tommy Fine would have never gone to the FBI in January of 1995.
Tommy refused to back down, however.
He said, "Why would I be telling this story if it's not true? I am going to prison for this."
When the defense got underway, Brenda and Cheyenne's lawyers argued that the initial FBI investigation had come to the correct conclusion.
The defense's position as to the death of Billy Bratcher is that it was accidental.
And They suggested that the Bratcher family's push to prosecute Cheyenne and her mother wasn't a quest for justice. It was a desperate attempt to get their hands on the $500,000 in insurance money.
The insurance company had said they were going to go ahead and pay the claim.
The defense claimed that the man behind it all was the Bratcher family lawyer, even suggesting that he had more or less paid Susie Tolbert to pressure Tommy into confessing.
This case not only looks fishy, it smells fishy.
But would the implication that Cheyenne and her mother had been framed cause the jury to sympathize with the defendants when they took the stand? Cheyenne testified first on the 8th day of the trial.
Cheyenne came off as somewhat meek and mild-mannered.
She cried a lot.
And she blamed the fact that she was on trial for murder squarely on her brother.
She said if Tommy was lying, she had no idea why he would implicate her in this.
Maintaining her innocence, Cheyenne claimed that she had nothing to do with her husband's death.
All she did was drive Billy.
You know, she was a victim of circumstance.
Cheyenne did admit that she and Billy had marital problems and that there had been some serious fights. But she also broke down in tears as she described how she still loved her late husband.
Even if there was a conspiracy, I believe Cheyenne had no part of it.
But while Cheyenne spent most of her testimony in tears, her mother appeared unflappable when she took the stand.
She does have a strong personality, and that was very apparent when she testified.
Like Cheyenne, Brenda also denied any involvement in Billy's death. And while she admitted having problems with him in the past, she said that she had loved him too.
She had an answer for everything. Brenda was extremely convincing on the stand.
And by the time Brenda's testimony was finished, Billy's family feared that she just might have won the jury over.
Her demeanor was very friendly, very social. She was trying to engage the jury to like her.
In fact, Brenda's testimony was so convincing that as the case went to the jury, the defense was guardedly optimistic.
I thought we had a chance of an acquittal.
Coming up, Billy's family anxiously awaits the verdict.
I was saying a lot of prayers.
But will their quest for justice come up short?
I wish I could say there was a vindication.
On September 5th, 1995, at the federal courthouse in Amarillo, Texas, the jury announced it had reached a verdict in the trial of 23-year-old Cheyenne Bratcher and her mother, 44-year-old Brenda Fine. They were both accused of conspiring to murder Cheyenne's husband, Billy, in order to collect his life insurance.
The insurance policy was $250,000 upon Billy's death and double indemnity on an accident.
And according to the authorities, they had almost gotten away with it. It wasn't until January of 1995, more than 9 months after Billy's death, that Cheyenne's brother came forward and confessed to killing Billy at Cheyenne and Brenda's urging.
Here's a guy who kills his brother-in-law, but there was some decency in him.
At trial, the defense had argued Billy's family and their lawyer had trumped up the charges against Cheyenne and her mother so they could collect the money.
This was basically a case put together by a private attorney after the FBI had previously concluded that there was no case here.
But would the jury agree? No one was quite sure what to expect.
I was nervous, I was scared, I was anxious.
I was saying a lot of prayers.
But when the verdict was read, the jury found both Cheyenne and Brenda guilty. Cheyenne appeared shocked by the decision.
There was just like a look of disbelief on her face.
Cheyenne stood up and said, "Your Honor, I'm innocent."
But the judge would have none of it.
The judge said, "Ma'am, you've got 12 peers over here in the jury. They each individually found you guilty. No, ma'am, you're guilty."
And since Cheyenne and her mother had been found guilty in federal court, would both be going away for a long time. Life in prison.
A life sentence in federal prison means a life sentence. There is absolutely no possibility for parole.
And the person whose testimony put them there didn't get off easy either. Despite his cooperation, Tommy Fine received a 30-year sentence.
I thought that was a little high. I had hoped for 15 or 20. Federal judge is real harsh.
Cheyenne also faced one more consequence for her crime. Her children, only 2 and 4 when their father died, have rebuffed all of Cheyenne's attempts to reach out to them.
She's not a mother. She's not a human being. She didn't think about me then. I'm not gonna think about her now.
This is a tragedy, but it's also a blessing. Because I got to get raised by the people that raised my father.
And that, according to Billy's mother, is a far worse outcome for Cheyenne than any prison sentence.
That's your real punishment. You have lost your children.